Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Monday, March 24th, 2025. I think this is a study session of the Minnetonka City Council. I'll call the meeting to order, and we will go around the room and get everyone introduced, and we'll start with Sarissa.
Sarissa Falk, Senior Management Coordinator.
Rena Dahman, Assistant City Manager.
Mike Vaughn, City Manager.
Darren Nelson, Finance Director.
Kimberly Wilburn, City Council at Large.
Kizzy Copley, Ward 4.
Rebecca Shack, Ward 2.
Brad Wiersum, Mayor.
Paula Rameli, Ward 3.
Patsy Foster Bolton, Ward 4.
Deb Calvert, at-large, seat A.
Will Manchester, Public Works Director.
Julie Wishnak, Community Development Director.
Eric Nielsen, City Attorney.
Kelly O'Day, Recreation Director.
Scott Borbin, Police Chief.
Kevin Fox, Fire Chief.
Derek Metzger, Deputy Fire Chief.
Melanie Putz, City Assessor.
Bill Wilson, City Engineer.
Matt Kumka, Park and Trail Project Manager.
All good. Well, thank you, everyone. Will, you already identified yourself, so I was sitting there thinking, okay, I was waiting for you, pardon me. But you're all set. So, well, welcome, everybody. Busy times these days. I want to thank all the staff. I thought the State of the City really went well, and I appreciate all the participation of all the staff. It was a lot of fun. So I thought it was fun. I hope you thought it was fun. Let's see. We've got, we first have DEI Commission interviews, and I believe we only have one candidate tonight, correct? So they should go fairly quickly. And we'll just do it the usual way, have the candidate come in, introduce herself, and then we'll run through these questions, and we'll take it from there.
And Brad, if I can, just
Yep.
we're waiting just for the next few seconds here. I just want to mention that tomorrow morning, the mayor was invited to the Vantage program. There's the Vantage Kids at 8:15 tomorrow morning. I do a presentation to the mayor. We learned that all council are invited as well. So tomorrow morning, 8:15, if you're available at the Vantage building, is a presentation.
Right. Yeah, it starts at 8:15, and everyone's invited. We kind of got the notice. This has been a dynamic thing. Just ask Sarissa. So things got nailed down at the 11th hour. But please feel free to come. But if you can't make it, no problem. The notice is so late. We get it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. How are you?
Oh, good. How are you doing? How are you all doing today?
Well, we are. Yeah, this is a study session, and so we've got a larger group than normal. And in the interest of time, we won't have everyone go around, but we will have our council members will run down, and then we've just got a handful of questions for you, and we really appreciate your being here. And then we'll ask you a few questions, and we won't take too much of your evening.
Sounds good to me.
All right, and so Dr. Wilburn.
Kimberly Wilburn at Large.
Kizzy Copley, Ward 4. Rebecca Shack, Ward 2.
Brad Wiersum, Mayor.
Paula Rameli, Ward 3.
Patsy Foster Bolton, Ward 1.
Deb Calvert, at-large, seat A.
And so that's the council, and then around we have all the staff members, and we have on our agenda tonight, after you leave, we're going to get reports from all of the different departments as we look toward preparing our budget. So we've got a big group here tonight, but we're not here to intimidate you. So. Anyway, so we've just got 4 questions for you, and we appreciate, one, you are applying for the DEI Commission. And I know that we've all read your application, and so we'll just, the first question is not too tough. Please tell us about yourself and what in your background makes you the right person for a position on the DEI Commission.
Definitely. Well, I'll start. My name is Alyssa Dean. I use she, her pronouns. So a little bit about me. I identify as queer, white, cisgender woman. I kind of come from Minnetonka as far as I spent part of my middle school here and then graduated from the high school as well. Wandered around in my 20s and then came back to Minnetonka to live and then also work at the U of M Twin Cities. There I work with undergraduate students in the College of Liberal Arts. I also help advise OSTEM, which is our LGBT student organization connected to students in STEM careers. And I also do a lot of work with both DEI at work, but also looking at the larger community of Minnesota and volunteering and getting involved and connected there as well. I'm also someone that's often seen as a connector, and so bringing folks together to build community, whether it be through crop art is something I'm uniquely involved with, or DEI initiatives and like building a DEI resource library at work, which is our first one that we've ever had. So as far as what's in my background, showing up in community is a big thing for me. So I volunteered at Pride this past year and was also helped in organizing it as well. And then also regularly show up to community events. One of the things, if I were to take on this role, I have rainbow shoes that I like to show up in at community events because it's a really easy tell to someone else, like, hey, you might be someone that I can talk to and trust. It also gives me an opportunity if I'm inviting community members in, especially from the LGBT community, hey, you can find me in the rainbow shoes. There's not a ton of folks that wear rainbow shoes around, and so bringing in that connection and showing that continued involvement. Having experience as youth in this community as well as an adult, I've been able to see Minnetonka grow and develop in their DEI. When Jace was hired, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And so really being able to see Minnetonka embrace DEI and look at how we can bring that forward to welcome all members of our community, even more than maybe what I experienced in the past as a youth or a teen member of this community. And then ongoing growth with development in the LGBT identity, as well as connection to identities that I don't hold. And so one of the pieces is that I look at DEI as ongoing development and growth. And so showing up and learning and passing the mic on to folks that don't share the same identities as me, as well as folks that have intersectional identities that I don't have, and really taking the time to listen. Something that I've talked with Jace about is wanting to do a listening session with queer folks and folks that want to come show up to kind of learn from their voices, not just mine, what folks are interested in seeing in the city of Minnetonka, so that I can help pass that mic to them and bring that back to community meetings here as well.
Great, thank you. In your review of the Minnetonka City Code, Section 150.015, Powers and Duties, Section 3, describe, I'm sure you've studied that, like the rest of us have. Describe in your own words what it is to be an inclusive and equitable community for everyone who lives, works, or recreates in the city. What's that all mean to you?
Yeah, for me that really comes down to being welcomed, valued, supported, and seen within the city of Minnetonka. And so how can we create spaces, experiences, opportunities where all of the members of our community can feel all of those things? And when I think about welcoming, I think about continuing to welcoming you again to this event, welcoming you again to this other opportunity, so that folks continue to feel invited into the opportunities that we have as an amazing community here in Minnetonka. And so some of the things that I think about, what would I see in Minnetonka that would communicate that to me? And so some of that is members having a voice in decision making. One of the things that I loved about the sustainability work here in Minnetonka is I kept on showing up to events and seeing a sustainability table, or folks asking me, what do you think about sustainability? And I was like, wow, you people really care about sustainability. So kind of encouraging that engagement and asking for perspectives. Also seeing a rainbow flag in City Hall, like seeing those visual cues even within our City Hall. Having vendors or food from a variety of different cultures. I know Jace has done a lot of work to kind of help bring that into our community events, so to me that also shows that. Having accessible buildings, and so really thinking about the ways that we can show that, not just through the things that people interact when they're talking with us, but also what they're seeing and experiencing in their experiences here in Minnetonka.
Great, thank you. So, third question, and I think you saw these before. So, what excited you about being on the DEI Commission in Minnetonka?
Collaboration. Really, for me, I love being able to be in a community of folks doing the work so that we can collaborate and connect with each other, and the many different perspectives that brings on an issue that comes up in the city. So I'm going to see something from my perspective and my lived experience, but being able to hear it from multiple perspectives and take into account the entire community and conversations and what we might be able to do and how we can support. And when there's moments where I need to step back, like I'm a white cis woman, like there are moments where I need to step back and listen. And then there are also moments where I can step forward as a queer person and share and connect in different ways. And so really looking at that collaboration, not only in being able to build something within our group and advising folks, but also being able to show up in community as well.
Thank you. So, we're to the last question already. Based on your understanding of the commission, what do you think will be an individual challenge for you, as well as, and also, what do you think will be a challenge for the group?
Yeah. So individual challenge for me, as I've kind of talked about a little bit through all this, it's relationship building is huge for me. I want to build trust with the other folks on the commission, and they've been meeting for a while. And so a challenge for me right out the gate is going to be building that trust in that relationship so that folks feel comfortable in doing the work together with me, because it can be messy and it can be hard, and things can happen where folks can not necessarily intend to, but do hurt each other in the process of doing DEI work. And so my core foundation is building that trust so that we can do that collaborative work together. And so that's that initial challenge that I see in my work.
Great.
When I think of the bigger work of the commission, in my conversations with folks in the community and also at the U, there's a lot of challenge that comes with the complex nature of executive orders and what the president posts on X. And regardless of political affiliation, the groundwork is there's a lot changing all at once, all the time, and a lot of different perspectives popping up all over the place. And that's especially impactful for our diverse communities that we have here in Minnetonka. And so I think the challenge of the commission is in their work, or in our work, if I'm allowed to join, is to navigate through that with our community and have their voices share what they're experiencing here in Minnetonka. The example that I gave is if a community member reads something on X and sees that as law, but the real law that we have in our city and in Minnesota is different, and we have a police interaction, how are we going to work through that? What does that look like, and how can we move forward through that experience in that situation? And I think over the years that's going to become more and more complex. And so we need to kind of figure out how to navigate that as a community.
Thank you. So we're done with our questions, but if you have a question you'd like to ask of us, feel free.
Sure.
Mayor,
Yes?
I talked with Mr. Funk earlier
Yep.
today, and I actually have one more question.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll let you I'll let you ask a question, then I'll go to Councilmember Calvert.
Okay, so my question is, you all have been able to see the work so far of the DEI Commission. What excites you most about that work, and what do you hope for a year down the line to see coming out of that group?
All right. Would any council members like to grab that? Otherwise, I'm happy to take a stab. Anyone?
No, I think we've had some wonderful events where people in the community have just felt seen, which I think, is half the battle. And I just think that there's been excellent attendance at many of the events that center on celebrating diversity in the tapestry of our community. So, it's not that we never did it, it's just that it just puts a little spotlight on it, and we're able to, and I also just think that having, especially the young people on the commission, be at events, and the events, like some of the family events have just had really fun activities to sort of have people approach the table and think about, you know, being welcoming. And I just think it's been really creative. Jace has done a wonderful job.
So I'll just add a little bit. You know, since I've been mayor and for a long time, Minnetonka really works to be, you know, an inclusive and welcoming community. And one of our 6 pillars of our strategic plan is that we are an inclusive community. And I believe we've worked hard at that for a long time. But I will say that since the DEI Commission was established and connected, I think Jace, to your point, has brought in a new level of welcomeness and including groups that frankly hadn't shown up at City Hall very often in the past, and now they are. And I think that's been a transition. And I give a lot of credit to both our city for recognizing that we need to take that initiative, but to Jace personally for his interpretation of what his role is. And it's not just about race, or it's not just about, you know, particular ethnic groups. It's about really reaching out broadly and making, I mean, everyone is welcome here. And I think the way the city has pursued that, and we have a long ways to go. We're not a particularly diverse community. I mean, you look at our demographics. We have a lot of diversity, but you know, we're still predominantly Caucasian, and so, and again, it's not just race either. But I think we are really embracing our differences and getting to know people who are truly different than we are, and connecting with people that maybe in the past didn't get connected as much with. And I think that's an important role. So I hope that answers the question a bit. But it's a work in process. It's a journey, not a destination. And then Deb, you had a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for being here, and thanks for what you do. And this is a little bit of an uncomfortable question for me. But I felt I had to ask it. So, and especially in light of the executive orders and the things that I find, you know, incredibly reprehensible. At the College of Liberal Arts, there were several faculty members who really engaged in pretty blatant anti-Semitism. It wasn't just anti-Zionism, it was anti-Semitism. And they had published articles, and one person was just, didn't get hired as dean, and one resigned, an anti-Zionist resigned. And so I just want to just get your read a little bit on that experience in that department. Maybe it predates you, maybe not, but those are as the only Jewish person in this room, it's something that is very important to me.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for sharing, and thank you for the bravery too in sharing. So I've been working at the U for 10 years. I will say that the College of Liberal Arts is gigantic. And so some of the things that happen, I am lower level, and so my say into things is different. But how I experience things like that is through my students. And so when they're showing up in my office in tears because of what they're experiencing on campus and things like that, it's being there to listen and hold their experience and being able to talk through what are options that the student can take if they want to, what are options that I can take as a staff member that I have the ability to, and then where are the folks in both the community on campus, but I also echo the community off campus too, that they can connect in with to find support, connection, shared identity, shared experience, because I think, well, it's pushing back, it's also finding that safe place in that home and community to be able to navigate through the incredibly challenging things, whether it's happening on campus or a city or in the greater world. We need those recharge opportunities with our community while we're also pushing back. And so, as a staff member, I, had the opportunity to share my voice, and I have the opportunity to walk by folks on campus and know who they are and be able to share things verbally that maybe I would not be able to share through email. And so it was both that support of my students and also kind of the navigating where are my opportunities to share my voice in that situation, and kind of navigate that.
Thank you.
Does that help to answer
Yep.
that question? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was not on our list, but
That's
anyway.
okay. That's
But
okay.
well, thank you very much for being here, and we will get back to you very quickly this week, and so
Sounds
you'll
good.
know what their status is. But I want to thank you for coming in, and your enthusiasm's contagious. So that's
I'm here for
that's working for you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, folks.
Thank you so much.
Do I need to turn this off?
I'll take care of it.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
You get to go home now. We're going to
I
be
do.
here. We're going to be here for a while.
It's definitely cold, but it's very nice. It's pretty out.
Yes, yes. Oh, I will take this. I used to live in northern Wisconsin, and we would like wear shorts in this weather, so I'm embracing it.
All right. So that brings us to business items, number 3B, Director Budget Presentations. And Mike, you get to kick that off.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Council, good evening. So we have, as acknowledged with our introductions this evening, our directors are here and other supporting staff from our various departments. Tonight, as you know, is the first part of our budget. It's not officially our budget kickoff, but this is kind of the prelude, if you will, to our budget kickoff. Just really up on the slide, I want to walk through with you just really what the next 9 months look like. And I know many of you know this, but it's always hard to imagine how much time we spend on our budget. It's one of the most important things you do as a council and we do as a city. So just giving you a sense of what the calendar year is going to look like. So with tonight, March 24th, we have our director presentations. And what you'll hear from directors is really a succinct type of presentation, in the sense that every director, I think, has 5 or 6 slides. They're very the same theme. So what you'll hear from directors tonight is a quick overview of their organization within the department, just to remind you of their organizational structure. They will highlight 2024, some of the activity in 2024. And I know you've heard some of that through our year-end strategic plan presentation, but individually you'll hear from them on some of their 2024 accomplishments. A look at 2025, so what's on the horizon for this year. We'll want to then also identify challenges, because even though things are really great in the city, we still have our challenges. And so we would certainly want you to identify those to you. So again, as we go into our budget, so you have an understanding of some of the challenges that we're facing from a staff perspective. And then last, we also want to touch on federal impacts. I know I think all of you have mentioned to me, with the administration, the new executive orders, what does that mean for the city? And so the departments will each kind of highlight if we've identified a potential impact, that'll also get noted. And then at the very end, I'll turn it over to Sarissa. You had seen the grant spreadsheet earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've mentioned to all of you that we've updated that to really give you a sense of where there might be some risk with grants. And so Sarissa's done a look back at 24 and this far into year-to-date 25, what that has looked like, and where there might be some potential risk with future grant implications. So with that, up on the overhead screen is the timeline for this year. Next is in May, when we'll actually do the official kickoff. So Darren and I will have a much lengthier presentation. We're not doing that this evening, because tonight doesn't give us the regular presentations like I mentioned. We need another month or so just to get a little further into the year and some more numbers in place before we can really start to hone in on real finite details. But we will be back in May for the official kickoff. And also then we'll have the community survey coming forward. Also at that May study session with the community survey, we'll also have Peter Leatherman talk about the business survey. And a couple of you got a prelude to that at the last week's WYSETA business partner meeting. So we'll have that community survey. That's really always good feedback for you, council, as you start to shape up priorities and thoughts for the budget. Then in June, we'll have our capital improvement plan and the economic improvement plan. So that'll be a big study session in June. We'll lay out those 2 documents. Then in August is when we'll hone in on the operations side of our budget. And Then in September, we'll have to identify a preliminary tax levy. And then in November, we really can bring back that operational budget, and then we also dive into the enterprise fund. So we'll certainly talk about utilities and our special revenue accounts, our enterprise funds accounts in November. December is the public hearing, and then final levy also in December. So it's a high-level snapshot, and virtually every month we're talking budget between now and the end of the year. So we don't get much of a reprieve, as you know, when we talk about budgets. So with that, I don't want to spend any more time talking. I really want to get into our director presentations. We have 8 of them this evening. They're about 10 minutes each, so for about the next hour 20, where you'll hear from directors. And then at the end of that, we'll have time for feedback that we'll want to hear from you, just based on what you're hearing from us tonight.
Thanks,
With that,
Mike.
Really want to kick it over to Miranda, who's going to start with admin. There's no special flavor of the order tonight, other than it's alphabetical. So admin will be up first, and then we'll go from there.
So we reverse that next year, right?
Yeah,
Administration goes last? Okay, just wondering.
Alphabetical, besides legal, we let
Le-
Eric go
we
last
let
to
Eric
give
go
him
last.
Okay.
a little grace the first year. All right, so I wear dual hats. I'm the assistant city manager. I'm also the director of admin services. So I generally hit on admin services this evening. Admin services consists of 5 different divisions. So the one is the city manager division that consists of Mike and I, Sarissa and Jace. And then we have the city clerk division, the IT division, communications, and human resources. And that's our mighty IT department in the corner. So 2025 key measures. So for mayor and council, we do some of the community survey results, which is rating the quality of life, and that has been, so then percentages or numbers are projected for 2025. So they've either met them for 25 or they projected for 25. So we're anticipating a 95% rating on the community survey, and we'll find out here in May. Council meeting dates, regular and study session. We're anticipating about 40 meetings this year. Sounds worse than I think it actually feels, but about 40 meetings. Boards and commission appointments, reappointments, we were anticipating about 25. And then BIPOC board and commission members, about 45% of our total board and commission members. The city manager division, the DEI events hosted, we're hoping to host about 10 this year. DEI commission meetings, they are slated to meet every month this year, so 12. Action steps in the strategic plan, 76. Grants received, we're anticipating 15, and then of course the grant spreadsheet will help us keep us up to date. The city clerk division, so we're anticipating about 24,000 calls to the front desk. Total number of ballots cast, we're anticipating 13,500. It is a municipal election, so we'll see what our voter turnout will be there. Registered voter turnout percentage, we're anticipating a 35% voter turnout. We do get really good turnout for municipal elections, so I am hoping we can get 35% or more. And then data practice requests, we're anticipating about 175. Our communications division, our city email subscribers has reached 40,000.
That's awesome.
I feel like it actually crept a little bit above that most recent number, but they're projecting 40,000 for 25. Minnetonka Memo remains at about 50% of our preferred communication here in the city. Peter Leatherman always has a really good number on that too during the community survey results. Our social media engagement rate is 7.5%, and then video content produced. We are doing a lot more videos than historically done, and we're anticipating creating about 175 of those.
A quick question was, when he was interviewing, did anyone tell Eric that there were 175 data practice requests? All right, you don't have to answer that question. It's kind of rhetorical.
Just to jump in real quick, we can back up.
Yeah.
So one of the things in our budget books that, historically we spend so much time in the numbers, but we do spend a great deal of time in our data and having performance metrics. And we haven't really highlighted those to great detail the last couple of years, so you will see that from directors tonight. Just a little more emphasis on the things that we keep track of and monitor and report in our budget books.
And just to add, I think this is important. I just look at the information desk phone calls. That's over 400 a week. When you consider, people aren't sitting on their hands wondering what to do. There's real work here.
I will say too, when I used to oversee the front desk staff and do see them now on a greater distance, but
people, when I sit up there and fill in and you answer, people go, oh, you answered the phone. Somebody's answering the phone, I can talk to somebody. I mean, in our community, that really matters. When they call our front desk, recreation, any of our front desks, no matter what it is, somebody's answering the phone, and it's very rarely that we miss a call. And they note that when they
Yep.
call.
And that's a big deal.
So,
But
they know it is.
people expect voicemail, and when you pick up, and I know that when I pick up my phone, whoa, this is really a live person? I mean, you're the mayor, really? You know, I mean, it matters.
Yeah. So we work hard on making sure we have always coverage on the phones. Going into the last two divisions, so our human resources division. So city positions are regular full-time, regular part-time, and our paid-on-call firefighters. We reached 396 positions in the city. Our employee turnover rate, we anticipated about 5%. For 2025, we'll see where that number takes us. Workers' comp mod factor. This is something we watch really, really closely because this impacts our insurance. So for 2025, that is a solid number. It came in at 0.87. So that was what it was for 2025. Increase or decrease in our annual health insurance premium. We saw a 10.8% increase from 24 to 25. I don't know what we're going to anticipate for next year, but that's what we had this past year. So our BIPOC city employees, our regular full-time, part-time paid on call, we are at 8%. BIPOC city employees for seasonal, temporary, and flex part-time, we are at an increase of 13%. And then our average payroll count, depending on the time of year, depending what's going on, we can have anywhere, our average, I guess, is 594. I would say like August, when we have like paid on call, we have elections, we have election judges, we have seasonal staff and lifeguards and all the things. We can be around 900 to 1,000. So it creeps up and down.
Council members are included in the payroll count?
Yes, we consider our council members as seasonal, temp, flex, part-time employees.
Okay,
So
thank
would
you.
fall into that category.
Yeah.
So.
What season do we get to take off? But that's separate discussion.
More of our flex part-time, I think,
Okay.
is what they consider, is my guess. So IT division, so help desk requests, about 4,158. We monitor that one pretty closely, depending on what's going on. And then our field home remote connection supported is 560, right? So it's all your iPads, boards and commission iPads, all of our city issued cell phones, laptops, all the things. So it's a lot of equipment that is forever changing and moving. So going into our 2024 department highlights, so administered 5 successful elections. That was a feat for our election staff. They're enjoying this quiet time to get all their backload work done and get records work done. So last year was a huge lift for them, and they did a really, really good job. In 2024, we launched the DEI Commission. Jace developed a work plan with them. That was a success as well. We revived our safety committee. So Keela, she's right here. She is our safety and wellness coordinator. So she's housed out of Public Works and was able to revive our safety committee, and they're doing some really great work. I think that was in the Friday update as well.
Mhm.
So there's some more information there too. Talent management and development. So we have spent a lot of time, kudos to our HR staff, on staff developments. We're hosting supervisor and manager trainings, employee trainings. We recently had a training with our union supervisors on supervising union employees. So really spending more time on our staff development and trainings there. Strengthen Minnetonka brand, so much more videos, quick videos on our Facebook pages, Instagram pages, and so forth. Successfully navigated negotiations with 2 unions. Those don't always go so smoothly. So when we have a really great year with our unions, we celebrate those because it's a big deal. And we have really great relationships with our unions, so we're proud of those dynamics. We did review the city's business cyber networks and looking for ways to expand and teaming up with our school districts and ways we can better connect with one another on that. Continued focus on DEI initiatives and trainings. You saw Jace's workload. I think your eyeballs would come out of your head. He's doing so much, and we'll soon have help here, but he's definitely continued to move that momentum. Prioritize technology, security, and enhancement. So cybersecurity has been a real focus this past year and continues to be a focus going forward, and just making sure that we are secure. When we have technology moving around campus and off of campus, just making sure that we are secure, and then if something happens, that we have the plans in place to back us up. I would say across the board, probably every single person in this room on the staff side had a hand in completing a limited English proficiency plan. This was a state requirement. Corinne led the efforts. Sarah and Jace were heavily involved along with many other employees, so that has been done, and Jace is doing the training right now, developing it. That was a really big lift before Corinne left. We enhanced our internship program. So how can we make our internship program more of a networking opportunity for them amongst each other? How can we continue to build that candidate pool for future employees? I was an intern, Kelly was an intern, Susan Thomas was an intern. There's tons of us throughout the organization that grew up as interns here, came here as an intern, maybe left and came back. So how can we continue to enhance that program to make people have a really great experience so they can consider us moving forward? So we have to enhance that, and going into this year, there's a whole plan in place for our interns and a program officially developed. We improved and updated vacation plan. We were behind the mark compared to our comparables on our vacation plan. So we worked really heavily to make sure that we were competitive on vacation. We sent out a form that people had to sign, and we have never seen something return so fast in our lives. So raised, people were really excited about that, and making sure that we continue to express and value our employees' mental health and personal lives as well. We improved the use of Minnetonka Matters platform. So a lot of our active projects will now be found in Minnetonka Matters. We've been using it more frequently and marketing it more as well. And then, as mentioned before, Sarissa developed a grant tracker. We never really knew what was coming in and out, and so being able to really track that in a more way that many of us can view that without having to call Darren and bug him for what grants were coming in, made much more of a seamless process across the board and allowed more staff to enter in their grants coming in and more transparency as well. So 2024 was a big year for admin, and continuing into this year. So our challenges for 25 and 26 is recruitment and retention. So you'll probably hear from every single person in this room about recruitment and retention. Where it's different on the admin side is HR is supporting the recruitment and retention. So any employee that needs to be hired, we're rolling through HR. So our talent acquisition specialist gets inundated with seasonals. She does all of the postings. She goes to job fairs. She's really busy. So not only is admin, we are trying to recruit and retain our own employees, we're also supporting the organization with recruitment and hiring efforts. Embracing technology's disruptions. I don't know if I've used the word disruptions, but emerging tech such as AI and analytics, it's all happening so fast, and we're trying to stay on top of the trends and trying to stay in touch with what's going on. So embracing it and then also trying to navigate it. And then, of course, continuing with the rising costs of medical care, technology, subscriptions. Costs are rising. It's been a theme, and continuing that. Data practices, just the volume. I think when I came here last year, our key measure anticipated 100 data practice requests, and we're anticipating 175 this year. They're ugly, they're big. The city-wide request ones, which our city attorney does get involved in the city-wide ones, they're tough, and it's a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money that we don't get back on those efforts. So really watching that and tracking those, and just navigating our way through those.
A quick question. When we track it, do we track our costs associated with those?
We don't right now. I would love if if there was a purpose to do. We don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably back of the napkin do it. We do track citywide versus Becky gets a call and she turns it around in an hour, right? There's a difference there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just thinking if we could track the hours or whatever, and because I think it's relevant when you go to the Capitol to talk about things that are holding cities back and affecting the way we do our business. I mean, understanding the size of those requests and the real costs in terms of time and money. I mean, if there's a way to track it that wasn't overly burdensome, I think that would be good data to have.
I think, speaking as somebody that does data practices, that easier said than done.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
tracking.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
It's really-
Yeah, and I believe it. I'm just thinking out loud a little bit because I just get irritated when they come in and some of them are so nonsensical. They just make you jump through hoops and nothing ever comes of it.
It's just
There's-
punitive.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, we can try to track it. It gets difficult, especially across different departments. And
Yeah.
the payroll system isn't set up that way, so it'd be spreadsheets. So not
Okay.
that we can't try
I'm
to
good.
track it.
I'm good. I just
I would just add to it that because we can't recover the dollars,
Yeah.
that's why you don't track.
It's
it.
moot,
We're
yeah.
we're limited to what we can actually recover, so it's.
Like copies. Copies, like the
and
the
most
cost of
folks want their data practice request digitally,
Mhm.
which you can't charge for. So it's basically spending all the time and you put it on a flash drive,
Mhm.
and it gets handed over, and you can't bill.
it's gone. Okay. Thank you.
I think we'd be
Good to know.
So if we knew that answer, some gardener and like
Yeah.
a lot involve our engineer and public works staff, and all Jubilee gets a lot, and gathering emails, and you're looking at who's doing them, and most of the time our leadership team.
Well, and maybe the way to do it too is just track the number like we're doing. How many do we get? And, kind of taking a guesstimate of what's the average one like, and then you can do the arithmetic on that and have a sense.
I think it's safe to say it's 6 figures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easily,
Yeah.
Easy 6 figures.
I wouldn't doubt that.
Continuing on, so cybersecurity I think will be a theme going forward for us and really focus effort there. So the pace of digital technologies and how we deliver them. Staff space, so this has been more rising recently. Staff want to be in the office, which is great. If you walk around City Hall, there's oftentimes a lot of people around City Hall. But we're running out of space, we're cozy, and trying to figure out if we bring in some interns, where are they gonna go? We're maxed on space, so navigating that. Growth of communication channels, videos, graphics, internally and externally. As we try and find more seamless and easy, digestible ways to communicate, oftentimes it's graphic and videos, and so just meeting those needs. And then reaching out to our hard-to-reach audiences. So how do we reach those we're not hearing from is another challenge that we're gonna really try and tackle, but not sure how we're gonna get there yet. So our 2026 goals and new initiatives, it's kind of crazy to think we're talking already next year. But our goals for next year, kind of in draft format, are improve the performance management system. So how we do performance management with our employees, hoping to improve that. Strengthen our record management. I think that has been on our list for a long time, and how do we continue to strengthen our public records? And then continuing to provide a professional development through training programs, creating a robust cybersecurity incident response plan. What if we do something severe hits us? And then promote DEI through ongoing training initiatives, develop a successful planning strategy for continuity. We've had a lot of retirements, and we're going to continue to see those, so how can we continue to succession plan for what's coming? There is a new ADA Title II compliance, which is an audit digital asset. So basically we have to scrub our entire website for it to meet these compliances, and it's a big undertaking. So that is going to be on our list. Innovate and expand marketing strategies to continue to grow our city brand. Enhance technology efficiencies with Microsoft 365 and then potential AI policies. And then again, maintain focus on our internships, our ACE programs to strengthen interest in candidate pools, and then improve our customer service response to technology upgrades. So how can we, if Julie gets an email, how can we route it through the right people without just emailing everybody, right? And so how can we better streamline that process? I did want to point out over here, so this is our communication staff. This is Jessica Case. Scott might mention her as well. She is our new PIO over in the police department. So that was a position that we took an officer position and made it a PIO. They report to admin, but they live over in police. So soon she's getting her feet underneath her right now, and eventually will be more in the community and trying to help our recruitment efforts and all those things, and then she'll move over to admin once we get that up and running.
Is that the same position that Olivia was in?
That is a different position. Yep, that is.
PIO is Public Information Officer. Yeah.
Yep.
Has that position been filled yet?
Are you touching on that?
I wasn't, but I can. So the Olivia's was with Hennepin County, We're now re-implementing our officer, CEO, community engagement officer, and then we're bringing on we're gonna assign a second officer next year, so we'll have 2 officers that work with Jace in the city efforts. I can expand on it more once we get to
Okay.
it, but.
Yeah, so Jessica, kind of very similar, she's working with admin, she has her at the admin team, but is based over and focusing on public safety. And that was all I had, and this is our great 2 employees, Jason and Sarissa, for the city management division and the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Questions, council? Pretty straightforward, but thank you. Thorough, yep, well done.
Julie's up next.
You ready, Mayor?
Julie's up next, rock and
Yeah.
roll.
Well, you know what? I have a lot of time in front of you, so maybe I can go a little bit quicker.
You're good.
Yeah. This is our org chart. We actually have everybody's name plugged in. You'll notice there's 4 vacancies right now in my department, and so that'll lead into my next slide about recruitment and retention. So basically, we have 3 division managers. One sits in the building area. That's Dale Gronberg. He runs everything and the inspections. We have Alicia, who does all of the economic development and housing work. And then our 3rd manager is Susan Thomas. We used to have a split for the assistant city planner. We've removed that. So now we just have 3 active managers in the community development department. In terms of key measures, some of the things we track are total planning applications. We had about 91 last year, and we expect around the 100 mark this year. Something that happens occasionally when the economy is a little jumpy, and that's what I'm going to call the economy right now, it'll hover around 100 no matter what. For some reason, and we've watched the these numbers are pretty consistent year after year after year. Even in downturn years, there's definitely always strong applications. The planning division looks at about 700 building permits per year. They look at a few grading permits, and then they go to about 82 public meetings. So if you think about what Miranda was saying about just council meetings, then you add the EDAC, you add the Planning Commission, you add the Sustainability Commission, and neighborhood meetings and zoning meetings and whatever else. So that number gets up there. In terms of general community development, and building is in this kind of mix, we have about 8,600 permits that are issued in a year. That's followed up with about 14,000 inspections. Construction value last year was $370 million, which is a pretty strong number. I'll show you some of the history of what's going on in construction numbers. Plan reviews, they said about 2,600 agenda items prepared. We had 205 items prepared last year, or this year we were expecting. And then public meetings, again, 82. Then under environmental health, there's about 570, not quite, establishments. There's 380 food inspections that happen. And then we have our follow-ups where maybe we have some problems and we have some challenges and they need to meet the standards. And so we're following up with those establishments. And that can be anything from a school to a restaurant to anybody who serves food. And so that's food trucks as well. We do follow-ups with food trucks as well. Nuisance complaint, I'm a little sad about this number. This has crept up over the last year. It's, we're expecting it'll stay around 550. Our highest ever, I think, was in the 600s, but during the pandemic and some of those down years, it was hovering around 400. And so I do watch this number closely to see, I don't know, general community happiness or lack thereof with the neighbors. This is usually an indicator. And then we have about 42 days to resolve. And that sounds like a long time, but if you think about some of the complaints that you all get from neighbors, it does take some time, especially if it's a complicated, maybe it's a lot of junk on somebody's property, or maybe we've got some cars to tow, there's just a lot going on. This can take a while. So average number of days resolve is 42. So last year's highlights, again, that construction being really strong. You can see what's happening in that chart below that shows you the last 5 years of construction, and it does kind of fluctuate. And so you think about some of those stronger valuation projects like apartment projects, and that's why our numbers were really high last year. You think about Marsh Run 2 was permitted last year, Kia dealership, the other 2 apartment buildings, the Gray Star and the Hillcrest site were permitted last year. So that's where you get kind of a high construction year. I did the math, is about 1.4 billion over the last 5 years, so pretty amazing when you add it all up. And that kind of goes with the assessing report that Darren's crew had last week with values and the strength of that continuing. We also this past year had a lot of variety in the planning projects. We had a lot of single family that was a little bit controversial. We also had the twin home project that was controversial. So there was some things going on there that weren't the norm. We're used to apartments, but we've shifted gears a little bit. There's also a strong rhythm for sustainability actions. There's the climate action plan. There's lots of events happening. Work plan progress is occurring. And you always hear our housing stuff, so I don't need to tell you. We're working on ownership. We're working on rental. Naturally occurring is something we're trying to give more attention to. And then environmental health is pretty steady, as we've talked, with compliance increasing. Our challenges, again, staffing, especially in the inspections area. Plumbing applications for a plumbing inspector who is retiring this next month. I think we had maybe 5 people. And that isn't they don't want to come to Minnetonka. That is, the market's still pretty strong for contractors, and they don't want to work for, they'd rather be in the field than work for government. So that's the problem we have with finding inspectors. It's too lucrative to be in the contracting field. Electrical, we got lucky. We had a few more applications, and so we'll be filling that one shortly. But it is a tough competition out there for just about every job. Planning, I think we had like 80 applications, so that was a much higher job attraction, but those contracting type positions are the ones we struggle with. I think our challenges too on the climate action is just a lot going in with one person who's leading the work. We're working on getting Green Corps members for the next year, and so that will always help offset some of the workloads, so that's something we're looking forward to. And then with construction costs soaring, how will that maybe impact what we're seeing for projects? We have been seeing strong tenant improvements in existing office buildings, which is an interesting dynamic. I wasn't expecting that, but that's been happening over the last year, seeing if that might continue. And then the vacancy that we have around the city, how are we spending time and resources kind of managing, attracting some new occupants to those buildings is on our minds. And then finally, in the goals and new innovations, really trying to elevate that housing work, talking about this legacy program. I think it came up last year in the EIP. We're going to talk about it again and getting a little bit further on the implementation of that. I'll talk more about that in a couple of months. Making meaningful progress on climate. And then that zoning work group, let's not forget about all of the work they have to do and getting some momentum there. And then, again, monitoring and adjusting for construction activity. That, I'll stop. Hopefully that was
Thank
enough.
you, Julie. That was succinct. Questions for Julie and her team? You've got a big group there.
Are you hanging in there with your vacancies? It's been bumpy this year.
It's really, I think that what's really interesting is everybody just steps up, which is pretty cool. Everybody just kind of fills in the gap, and that's really cool. But at some point, people will get a little burned out. So we're working on that. Who's next?
All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Whoever's in charge, sorry.
The thing, the workshop, the seminar, the
How come it's oh, I didn't even update the beginning one. Gosh.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is admin.
Is that it or finance?
This is finance.
Are you going to go, is that over in Golden Valley
Right,
again?
right.
What day is it, Thursday?
All right, so good evening.
Thursday.
Just want to quickly go over the finance org chart. No changes from last year on that end of it. We have two divisions within the finance department. We had our city assessing side of things, which Mel and her staff, or Mel was at the council meeting last week for the assessment report on that end of it. And then on the accounting side of it, or on the finance division side of it, we kind of have our accounting side, and then we have our utility billing as well too. And so Joel Mary, is our assistant finance director, and then Liz Berger is the other manager there as an accounting coordinator. Looking at our 2025 key measures, so these are coming straight from the budget for finance and assessing. Looking at our monthly vendor payments, we pay about 660 check payments a month on that end of it. We pay about 38% of those electronically. We have we monitor those a little bit. We don't automatically do electronic payments on that end of it. We have the right vendors that we know that are, so we can kind of cut down on our potential fraud on some of those things as well too. So we do kind of push checks, even though checks are susceptible to fraud as well too. So unless we know for sure that there's it's a legitimate vendor, we've gone through all the due diligence to prove that they're who they are and their bank account information is correct, we kind of push them to the check side of things. Looking at our utility customer accounts, we have over 17,000 utility customers, and so we bill those, the residential quarterly and the commercial monthly. About a third of those customers utilize online billing, so that's good on that end of it, so we don't have to mail out their bills. They get their bills emailed to them or texted to them or any of those types of formats. And about 3/4 of the customers do pay electronically, so we see big payments coming through either via credit card or a ACH from their checking account on that end of it, so that has helped with processing over the last number of years on that end of it. Annual rate of return on investments, we're about 3.74% for 2024, so that was a good year. A couple years ago, 2021, I think it was 1.25%, so 2.5% is is real money on that end of it and helps the general fund along with all of our other funds as well too. So I'm not expecting that number to really, the feds may drop a percentage or a couple basis points throughout the year, or a couple cuts, but our percentage should stay somewhat similar for 2025 here going forward. And always our Moody's credit rating, we always have that as an indicator as well too. We do that with the strategic profile, and there again it's the AAA bond rating there. And then we also track our GFOA award for excellence in financial reporting, and that was awarded again just recently for last year's report here, probably a month ago or so. And that was our 41st consecutive year of receiving that award. So
Good work.
And then on the assessing side, kind of heard some of these numbers last week as well, but the citywide market value is up to just under $14 billion, thanks to Julie and her staff, and then market conditions play a role in that as well. And then our sales ratio is the ratio, and Mel's here, she's going to catch me tomorrow if I do this wrong, but this is the value of the ratio needs to be between 90 and 105% of the actual market value. And so we always kind of shoot for that 95% range. So if the value of the home is, the true sales price of the home is $500,000, we want to be just under that at 95% of that is kind of where we want to be at a range. And so when we look at all the values, they all cumulatively come together at 95.5%, so, which is a good spot to be. And then commercial tax petitions, I'll talk about a little bit about that as well too coming up, but we're expecting 80 of those this year, and those numbers are likely to increase moving forward or as well a little bit. So, and then our assessors, when they're out in the field as well too, they do provide a survey to all of our residents when they're out on site and to our businesses as well. And so we kind of shoot for a rating there of 95% of excellent or good on that on-site visit rating. So looking at our 2024 department highlights, I don't know if implementing GASB 94 and 96 is necessarily a highlight to anybody, but we're required to do them. So the Government Accounting Standards Board came out with two new pronouncements last year, and so this was dealing with public-private and public-public partnerships, recognizing those as a balance sheet item, and then our subscription-based technology arrangements as well too. So if we have a multi-year agreement with Microsoft, you need to pick up the asset and the liability on those. And so a lot of accounting work for not a whole lot of change in your bottom line of your balance sheet. So our report continues to grow year after year after year, and I don't know that it's a lot of beneficial information that's coming out of that area, but it is what it is. We had a promotion of Erin Kastner to our commercial appraiser. She had been one of our residential appraisers. And so then backfilling her is Michelle Lee, who started with us this last fall. We also began the first phase of the water meter changeout. We'll probably mention that as well too, but utility billing staff is involved with that as well too. So we had a kind of a good little test run. We had it kind of started late in the fall and got us several hundred meters changed out, and so have a process in place to hit the ground running here this spring. There again, the GFOA, the ACFR is the financial report, and so obviously we produce that each and every year, and we're working on that right now. Our auditors are actually in this week, so look forward to bringing that to council in June sometime when that report gets final draft on that end of it. And then we're also working on a process and procedure project within the finance and the accounting division side of it. So we're really looking to document all of our processes and procedures and looking at doing it in a uniform and consistent manner, along with creating a calendar of events that happen on a daily, weekly, quarterly, monthly basis on that end of it. We have a long-term employee of 31 plus years is retiring this summer, and so that was kind of a project to try and understand all of what she does that has changed over the time, and making sure that we are able to keep on going when she's no longer here. So that's been a nice project to kind of see what everybody does and kind of keep it all in a nice uniform manner. So, and then probably our favorite event of the year is that the finance department helps out with the senior book sale every year. So we help on the day of collection and sorting and all that type of stuff. And I usually spend the day outside helping people bring in books and unloading books from their cars and all that type of stuff, and it's kind of a breath of fresh air because I don't get a whole lot of calls to the finance department.
I was wondering what the picture was, and how that related to the finance department. But now,
so it's like
you're connecting
so
the dots
residents
for
are coming
me.
up and they're saying, "Thank you, this is the greatest event ever," and I'm like, "Yes." I'm like, "I like it." What about your property taxes? No. So that's always a fun event for us. We've been doing that for the last 3 years, I think, on that end of it. So looking at challenges, and I should mention our pictures here. So it's the first year for pictures. So that is a picture of some of our finance and assessing staff there at the book fair. And this is our finance accounting division. We had a couple of members absent that day, but it was a good opportunity to have the background picture there. And then, so our challenges are tax court petitions. Obviously with commercial industrial property values kind of stagnant or decreasing, or depends on what kind of segment you're in, we're likely to see some increase in petitions there as we adjust to the market values, and property owners maybe think that values should adjust one way quicker than they really are on that end of it. So we got a good staff working on those to make sure that we do a fair and equitable valuation on those properties as well. Then, as I mentioned, we have a finance accounting staff member that's retiring after 31 years, so that'll be a big change for us in our area. And then we have a couple more GASB pronouncements again this year as well too. So
There's job security in those.
It is. I started in government back when GASB was 29 and 31, and so it had taken them, I think, like 30 or 40 years to get to that. In the last 25 years, they've gotten 75 more pronouncements in place. So they're going at breakneck speed on this end of it. So,
What does GASB stand for?
Government Accounting Standards Board. So they provide, our financial reports have to abide by all of their pronouncements that come out on a regular basis. So, and then we have a couple other challenges. Our ERP implementation that we started a couple years ago, that unfortunately didn't go as planned on that end of it, and so we're working. Logis is looking at an exit plan on that, and we're obviously be working with them to help them deal with that situation and try to move on from there. We also have an ongoing IRS audit issued related to a 2016 bond that we issued, and so we're working with IRS for the last. It came out on July 4th, and so we've been dealing with them for a while on that end of it. We had a big meeting the end of December, and then I just get monthly updates from them that, it's still in process being reviewed. So I'm not sure how many more months it will be, but
Well, if we wait long enough, they might lay off. enough
I
people
actually,
that it just goes
but
away.
I actually talked to the agent last week because she calls on the 14th of every month. And the first, which in February 14th, it was on Valentine's Day, and then sure enough, it was March 14th again. And I talked to her and I said, I assume that things are pretty hectic on your end. She goes, yeah, they're more than crazy. So I'm like, well, glad to hear your voice anyway, from a personal standpoint anyway, not necessarily from an IRS standpoint, but.
Even, there's nice people even at the IRS.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
right. So, right.
Yes, we do.
And then the last item we have on there is just kind of the future with assessing services. I know the council's kind of aware of what's the situation with Hennepin County on that end of it and such. And so I think just kind of keeping that in our back minds as well too, and figuring out what the future of that lies, if it's, something that we'll be dealing with for over the next number of years, I would assume, on that end of it. So. And then 2026 goals and new innovations, that's pretty much focused around a lot of software innovations. Utility billing software, that was part of the ERP process with Logis. That's a separate software company, and so we are still moving forward with that. That process is going well for the couple pilot cities that have, I think, are almost probably ready to go live, and the next cities are getting ramped up to go into that. Probably sounds like our implementation will probably be in 2026 sometime, probably later in the year. Talking with Logis and their game plan there. The water meter changeout process, that'll continue now for the next couple of years as well too. So that'll be busy with our staff as well too, making sure that bills are accurate with the old meters and the new meters coming in, and any estimates that had went out to residents on bills. And then if we do wrap up the ERP system with Logis, we need to start we still have an old system in place, and so we need to start looking at a new ERP and human capital management applications there as well too. So we'll probably start looking at that later this year as far as developing an RFP late this year, early next year, and then try to get that out on the street next summer sometime and figure out a game plan for implementing that. And then we're also looking at the program and priority-based budgeting system as well too. I know that's a priority of the council with strategic plan and such like that. There is a software application that I think some of you have seen at NLC potentially on that end of it, and we're working with them a little bit to see, making sure that it's a program that works for us, but will help us also kind of identify those programs and priorities throughout the city as well too, and helping us get through that process and get us to a better spot to be able to reprioritize all of our sources and uses on that end of it and such. And then one last one is our CIP, our Capital Improvement Plan software that we currently use. We made a conversion to a web-based platform this last year. So when the CIP comes out to you in June here at our study session, that'll have been created on a new platform as well too. So lots of stuff going on that end. And I missed one there with the Logis and the property data system. The assessing side is going through an upgrade on their side of it as well too, with their property data system, and Logis revamping the current system they have in place there. As far as federal grant impacts, finance doesn't necessarily have any. We don't apply for a lot of grants, but we are heavily involved with each and every department on those. So we are also keeping our ears to the ground on a lot of that, and making sure that we're aware of what's happening at federal, state, and local areas on that end of it. So, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Darren. Council, any questions for Darren?
I have a really quick question.
Yes. Go for it.
So it feels like if 77% of people are paying their utility bill online, but only 33% are getting their bill online, by my math, we've got a 34% opportunity of people who are willing to engage online.
I would even argue it's a 44%. But
Excuse me, 44%, you're right, bad at math. But I estimate that maybe that is a $50,000 savings if we could convert those people annually. And is there any, if every bill all in is with paper envelope postage 50 cents, is there a way we can incentivize that? And because it's really a one-time thing, right, to get them converted? And
it is, yes, absolutely. And we have seen that number growing. We've been working with communications on getting messaging out about the online piece of that. The incentive piece of it is, I know I've had communication or discussions with other cities as well too about that. And, some have done like a $5 credit here or there, and it doesn't, I don't know if it necessarily moves the needle much on some of that stuff, but I think it's more the communication piece, because once you go that direction, it's the only way to receive bills is to get them that way, it seems like, but makes life a little bit easier on that end of it. And it would save us substantial costs on that end of it. And it would help us too if we're looking at potentially moving to a monthly billing piece of it. If we can get rid of those costs from the post office and from printing bills, that would definitely help from that cost side of it. We'd still have a staff timing piece of that, but definitely an area of opportunity for us. So.
Thanks, Rebecca. Deb?
So this may not be just you, but I'm just thinking about some of the larger assets, things like fire trucks, and takes 4 years to build one nowadays, and they're extremely expensive now, and now there are tariffs with some of our partner countries that produce the parts and the raw materials and everything. So what are you seeing coming down the road on us being able to replace our assets that need to be replaced?
Global stabilization, no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we're gonna have to play that by ear. I don't know what Will or Kevin has seen on his side with the equipment side of things. I haven't heard much on regular standard vehicles yet, but I think it'll definitely impact it. I mean, it's either we have to look at extending lives of equipment, or there's no other option. If the dollar amount is the dollar amount, we either got to find a way to do it or we delay. So, and we've started delaying last year a little bit with some of our equipment. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well.
Darren, any other questions? The question I had is on the ERP thing. I know that's been a big pain in probably a lot of places. But are we thinking of going alone on an ERP consideration, or are we thinking of still kind of working through a consortium, Logis or another, for the ERP question, or is that all TBD?
A little bit TBD, but for the most part, I am convinced that we're going to go alone on it. I think Logis doesn't really have a plan moving forward for a financial system.
Yeah.
They'll probably hang on to the current one they have for probably 5-6 years until it's not feasible for them to do it any longer.
Yeah.
So I just think the way of the world is that there isn't a need for Logis in that
Space.
anymore for that.
All right.
Everything's hosted nowadays, so.
Yeah. Okay.
For this
I was just
program.
curious. Yeah.
And I would just concur with Darren that more than likely it's going to be we're on our own, and one of the, I think one of the primary reasons for that is when you're in a consortium like we are with Logis now, and there's 52 or 3 cities within Logis, and I think 18 or so cities that have our financing software package. In today's world, we need to have the ability to have flexibility in our programming of that software package. And so with Logis, how you get 18 cities to buy the same software package is you have the same software package, which means it isn't very customizable.
Right.
And so we have complex operations where we need to have ability to work with the vendor in not having a one-size-fits-all software package. And so that's why we're going to be more likely going on our own, because we have to be able to have a software where we can fit it to how we operate.
Right.
And not have to change our operations for it to fit a software.
Well, also, I mean, is Logis that's a Minnesota thing, right? It's not multi-state. And so if there's 52 participants, well, there's a pretty good range of city sizes. And then you're kind of constrained by what the smallest budget can handle. And so you may be stuck with doing things not in the way that's best for you, but in the way that all the members can handle, and sometimes you become, you kind of have a system that's built around the weakest link,
Right.
would be my,
Right. And we've kind of seen that across this application and some other applications where the innovation doesn't come as quickly as
Right.
as some of the more sophisticated cities would like on that
Yeah.
end of it, because they got to bring everybody along on that end of it. And we are, like I mentioned, we are still going with Logis through the utility billing application, but that's a little bit different. It's pretty much a pretty straight and simple project.
Everybody has
It's-
utility
it's
billing.
utility billing, so
Yeah.
once you have the statements up and the customer data in there, it's pretty straightforward on that end of it.
well, I support what you guys are doing, but I think being able to be nimble and right-sized for our community makes sense, because we're not one of the less sophisticated communities. And I think we need what we need.
And I think we're going to look for best in class probably between the human capital management side of it, the HR side of it, and the finance side of
Yep.
it, because it's just,
Yeah.
we thought there'd be the best of both worlds out there, and there really still isn't. After.
That's big stuff. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
All right, next.
All right, that's me. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Chief.
So tonight we'll kind of go over the fire department here. Moving through the organizational chart. The fire department, we run 3 divisions within the fire department. So we have our operations division, which is the largest division. That's pretty much where all personnel on the response side, equipment, stations, all funnel down from that. And then we have our emergency management division and our fire and safety division, which has the fire marshal and deputy fire marshals. Our fire department key measures are a little different, as not as much number based as they're really largely focused on the public safety master plan that is in place, and in 25 we are entering into year 2 of that plan. So as part of that, we are in the process of onboarding 9 full-time firefighters, which will bring us up to a total of 36 full-time fire employees. That'll go along with we are at 58 paid on-call firefighters at the moment. Once we bring those 9 online, that's going to bring our Fire Station 5 online, which is up off of Carlson Parkway and 394, and that's really primarily to focus on the Ridgedale area, which remains our busiest area of the city. That, and then Opus is our second busiest area, but we currently staff a station down there, so that'll give us 3 staffed fire stations 24 hours a day, with anywhere from 3 to 5 trucks on, depending on how our staffing with our paid on call is. In April, we will be coming to the council with our service level objectives document and a look at the fire station analysis that Wold Architects did. Really for 2026, that's our fire stations are going to be kind of our focus as we go through the budgeting process to get those up and running for 24-hour staffing. And then the service level objectives, they really dive into the numbers portion of our key measures that talk about response times, effective firefighting force, which determines how many people you got to have on scene in a certain amount of time, and it's dependent on the type of call. So EMS calls require fewer people on scene. Larger fire incidents require more firefighters on scene. So both of those items will be coming to you in April. And then a lot of work is continuing on the EMS issue at both the local and the state level. City manager Mike Funk and myself are doing a lot of collaborative work at particularly at the District 6 level in Hennepin County with Commissioner Edelson, and then also Hennepin County Ambulance. We have some ideas that we're kind of working through at a small scale. In District 6, again, just as a reminder, that's us and Hopkins, Excelsior, Eden Prairie. So hopefully we'll have some good things that'll come out of that. And then at the state level, the PSA issue continues to chug along at a pretty slow pace. They have a bill, I believe, right now that's dealing with some funding for outstate ambulance services, so they haven't really begun to tackle the PSA portion yet, but a little bit of progress better than no progress, so we're still hopeful on that. Our 2024 department highlights is we implemented our new records management system and our analytics software, so that was a big project for us. Our records management, we didn't intend to replace that, but they discontinued our other one and stopped supporting it, so we did move to a new system, which was actually a good thing because it allows us to do a lot more than we were able to do before. And then our analytics, which is then tied to our what will be our service level objectives, and allows us to track in real time things like our response times, busiest periods, busiest locations, things like that. It'll identify if we have certain addresses that are using up a lot of resources, if it's a type of congregate care facility, things like that. We brought new station alerting online at our central station and our fire station 3, which is an automated system tied right to Hennepin County Dispatch. And that has, just through that process, that's shaved about anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds off of our response times, because now as soon as the dispatcher starts entering the information, it automatically pushes out to our fire station. So we're not so dependent on an actual person pushing the call out to us. So that's helped with our response times. And then emergency management conducted 4 crisis management drills for the city, which included severe weather. We did a mass casualty incident and a couple of other incidents there, and that'll be ongoing also in 2025. We implemented an automatic external defibrillator loaner program. So what that is all of our public buildings and most buildings you go into in the community have AEDs located in them, but we have gaps throughout the city, particularly in like parks and when people have large events at their homes. And so what we have is now, because we replaced a bunch of our AEDs, we had some of our existing ones that we kept, and what people can do now is they can come in and borrow one from us. So if they're having a graduation party or a family reunion, things like that are going to be primarily outdoors, they can come in and get one of those from us and have it on site at their event, which then, as everybody knows, in sudden cardiac events, it's very important to have fast shock capabilities with those. So we're pretty excited about that. And then again, we did respond to another near record number of calls for last year at 5,700, and we did over 8,500 hours of training. Some of our challenges moving into 2025 and 2026 is call volumes are going to continue to increase, but even more so what we're seeing now is over 30, and I think I looked today and it's actually closer to 35% right now, of our calls are overlapping. So over a third of the calls have at least 2 or more calls going on, and it's not uncommon to have 3 or 4 calls going on at once. And if you look at the way we staff currently, a lot of days we have 2, maybe 3 trucks on. So you get 2 calls, 3 calls going at once, and now we're pulling office staff out, and it's starting to stretch us pretty thin. So and we really do anticipate that those are going to continue to increase. Another curious thing that has come up is mutual aid dependency is becoming difficult. We rely heavily in the metro area on mutual aid for larger incidents. Basically any fire we have brings in mutual aid, and vice versa. But what we're seeing now is more and more our neighbors, and we've even done it too, have had to deny service on a mutual aid call because we're all in the same boat. We're all seeing record numbers of calls. We all are running kind of bare bones on our staffing. And so it's not uncommon that if a jurisdiction gets a fire and they reach out for help from us, that there are times we can't send any help because we don't have anybody to send. We can call back our on-duty personnel, but that takes, by the time they get in and then respond, that's 15 or 20 minutes sometimes. And in a fire event, that's not a lot of time that you have. So that's kind of been a new problem that's popped up recently. And then EMS and mental health response. will continue to be a challenge. Chief Borboom will touch a little bit more on kind of what our plans are going to be for mental health response moving into the next year or two. Recruitment and retention, pretty common theme there. Paid on call side, it's a pretty demanding job to come in on the paid on call side, and it's becoming more difficult for people to work that into their personal lives. So recruitment's becoming difficult there. On the full-time side, it's a battle out there. Everybody's hiring. It's never been like this before, probably since the end of World War II. We've never seen hiring opportunities like this, so we're losing people on our hiring list before we can even hire them. And that includes our internal paid-on-call people. They're on our hiring list. As soon as we can ask them if they want to come in and interview, they've already accepted a job elsewhere. So it's very, very competitive out there, and there's just not enough new people coming in to the market that want to do this currently. So we'll keep fighting the good fight. You know, the good news is with the City of Minnetonka and our organization, it's a place, it's kind of a City Manager Mike Funk has said it, we're almost a destination employer. We have a strong reputation, so that does help us. We've been able to pull a few people from other departments away from there and draw them in. So, but it's going to continue to be a challenge. And then potential impact of the new OSHA emergency response standard that's slated to probably come out this year. So we are directed by NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Agency, and they kind of lay out our standards as far as how you respond, what equipment you have to have, how it's made, all of that stuff. But that's a guiding document that's not bound by law. Well, OSHA has decided to adopt that and make some changes to it, and then essentially it puts it into law. That has a lot of impact on a lot of departments. Some departments, it's more of a financial impact. For us, we're in a pretty good position as far as that side goes and the things we've already done. So, but it's going to be a lot of administrative stuff and how we track things. So we're keeping a pretty close eye on what comes of that. There's a lot of pushback on it, so we'll see what the final document looks like, but it could be an issue. Our 2026 goals and new innovations, so we'll continue to use our data analytics to really look at how we're deploying our resources as we start to staff up, especially since not all of our fire stations can accommodate 24-hour staffing. We can look at what areas of the city during peak times are we seeing calls, and that'll allow us to kind of move resources around and at least stage them during those busy times to help minimize those response times. Continue to implement the Public Safety Master Plan with really 2026 focusing on the fire stations and coming up with a plan on how to address those and get those to where we need them for that staffing. Continue to work with our care facilities with the goal of reducing lift assist. We go to a lot of care facilities for lift assist, and they have pretty specific requirements to their licensing that they have to abide by that deals with how many staff they have to have on, and really what is their responsibility with their residents. And a lot of them don't abide by it. A lot of them, they just default to calling the fire department and police departments to come pick their residents up when they fall and things like that. So our life safety division is really doing a hard educational push with these facilities in 2025 to really help them understand what are their requirements and you know, what do they need to do, and with the goal of really starting to reduce those calls. Some of our neighbors have begun working with their facilities, and they're starting to see a pretty good drop off. So we're pretty hopeful that that's going to work for us too. And then the last one there is continue to advance our health and wellness initiatives with our firefighters, focusing on cardiac health and cancer prevention. Those two items remain the number one killer of firefighters. Firefighters are 3 times higher than the national average for cancer. Right now, the last stat I saw is about 67% of all firefighters will get cancer. Cardiac health, cardiac is still the number one killer of firefighters. So we do a pretty good job of how we do screenings with our firefighters annually, but we need to do a little better on the cardiac and the cancer side, so we're going to do a lot of work with that this year. And then last I have is the federal grant impact. So we rely on SAFER and AFG. SAFER grant is the staffing grant, and the AFG is the equipment grant. And those are two grants that we typically apply for. There's a lot of uncertainty with them. The AFG grants did open and close, and we applied for it, but there hasn't been any movement since on that. So we don't know what's going on with that. And then the SAFER grant, which is usually open and closed by now, has not even opened yet, and we don't know if it's going to or when. The grant writers seem to think if we can get it open in May still, we'd be okay, but if it goes much past May, it'd be really hard for them to get it all wrapped up even by the end of the year. So not sure what's gonna happen with that. The National Fire Academy, which is our premier educational institute in the fire service, a lot of departments rely on classes there for promotional processes. The executive officer, fire officer program stuff comes out of there. They shut that down 2 weeks ago.
That's the feds.
Yeah, that's the feds. The National Fire Academy is out in Emmitsburg, Maryland. So we don't know when or if that's going to open back up. We had some people that were registered for classes to go out there, and that's 100% federally funded. So that's kind of a wait and see for us. And then another unique thing that came up recently, the discussions we're having in the metro here is potential changes with Medicare and Medicaid. Depending on what comes with that, we're anticipating a spike in EMS calls, because as people find it more difficult to get appointments at their clinics and start seeing their primary doctors earlier, they're going to sit at home and their illnesses are going to get worse until it's to the point where they're going to have to call 911 and go to the hospital. So we're starting to have some discussions on how we might have to address that. So I believe that is what I have. Questions?
Thanks, Chief. Council questions for Chief Fox?
I guess I have one question. You had mentioned about recruiting and just shortage of firefighters. I'm just wondering, do you partner, like the police department partner with the schools to go recruit high school students?
Yes, we actually are starting some talks with the Vantage program at Minnetonka. That's our first stop, and we're trying to see if we can develop a pathway program that will, and the technical college is actually getting involved too. So the hope is to offer up some opportunities while they're in the Vantage program to get things like their EMT certification and maybe some basic fire stuff that not only gets them a head start when they graduate to get into the fire service, but they can earn possibly some college credits along the way too. Because yeah, that's one of the things we identified is we got to start reaching out to these students when they're still in school and really try to get them interested in it and let them know there's some good opportunities out there. So once we figure out what we're going to do with Vantage, and then we'll be reaching out to the Hopkins School District too.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's the sooner you can start earlier, with the.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because they have to be 18 to
Mhm.
join. So yeah. Thank you for
Council,
that.
other questions?
No, but once again, there are layoffs in the Forest Service, so maybe some wildland firefighters will start migrating over.
Possibly.
You know, I did have one question. You know, as you're reviewing some of the stats on some of the things that you're facing, multiple calls at the same time and everything, are you finding the length of calls, any change there? Are they getting longer or any change, or are you tracking that in any way?
We do track time on scene for
Yep.
our calls, and our EMS calls, our on scene time is a little bit longer, but part of that too is we're doing more on scene now too. So we have, working through our medical direction, we have more interventions that we're able to do on scene. So even if the ambulance is there quick, between the paramedics and our staff, we're able to do a lot more pre-hospital stuff, which then increases their chances
Yeah.
at the hospital. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're spending a little bit more time on scene, and then On the fire side, not much has changed there. It's really dependent on the type of call that we encounter, but yeah.
Yeah. One more question. You know that lift assists are kind of my an issue for me. We charge people for false alarms.
Mhm.
Can we go back and charge these facilities for lift assists?
I don't have an exact answer for you. I know there's some provisions that allow us to bill for certain responses that we do.
Mhm.
I'd have to look and see what exactly the parameters are, but
All right.
potentially.
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, I think, if clearly want to get somebody off the floor, but I think that there's probably variation between some people. I mean, they're transferring the risk onto the public sector. That if they're going, that's fine. If they want to do that, that's fine. But they're going to pay for it. It's not going to save them money. It bothers me when I see a private profit-making entity shifting their costs onto us. So that's
It's very similar to the fire alarm billing,
Yeah.
because, the residents contract with
Yep.
a third party for a service, and then the third party provides the service of responding to a call, which is us, so we
Right.
become the uncompensated
Yeah.
kind of third party.
So anyway, we don't have to solve that tonight, but
Plus, they're supposed to, there are certain regulations, they're supposed to have certain things and they're not complying? Isn't there
Yeah.
some consequence for that?
Yes, and I don't know where the oversight on that has come, because, they're managed by the state. So I don't know how aware the state is this, but yeah, they gotta have, a lot of them will go down to minimum staffing or below at night, but they're required to have a certain level of staff, and then they are required to provide some service to the residents. Most care facilities, their licensed nursing staff goes home sometime in the evening, and then the overnight staff is primarily licensed at a lower level than what they have during the day, so their capacity to do some things is diminished, and that's when we start seeing a lot of the calls that we're seeing. So.
I do know that.
Thanks.
I'm
sorry.
So with the cancellation of the National Fire Academy amongst the chiefs, what's the plan?
We don't have one yet, because we didn't see that one coming, and it just happened. There's other educational opportunities out there for us, but there was a lot of people that, the executive officer program there, that's a 3 or 4 year program sometimes. And a lot of cities, when they're hiring at the chief level, require that stuff. And so it puts a hamper on the promotional processes. And some of these people that were halfway through their program are suddenly put on hold. So we're in a wait and see.
Paula?
Yeah, I was just curious, circling back to the lift, how many, you said that's increasing, and, is that like a fairly substantial percentage of, kind of the calls right now? Do we have any, like, ballpark on that? I did speak while you're looking for that to, recently with another council member, and I'll have to look back and see who it was in what city, because they are starting to charge for lift assist.
Yeah, so we're at 129 for the year so far.
So far.
Yeah, it's hundreds and hundreds. We're
It's not insubstantial.
no.
Okay.
But those are not all at care facilities
Right.
either. We do a lot at private residences too. So.
Yeah.
But I can
right.
get those numbers we have.
All right.
I'll see if I can find out.
Yeah, and let's move on a little
Yep.
bit, but you have,
Just real quick, so on the lift assist, aren't we talking with dispatch and Hennepin County about finding personnel that are not necessarily firefighters or police to help, like just dispatching just for that, sort of in a separate kind of?
There hasn't been a lot, not at Hennepin County Ambulance. They've been trying to do some work on it, but they've had staffing challenges too. On the dispatch side, not really. Their job's just to code the call and push it out. So it's really up to us to figure out how to deal with these.
Great. Well, we're going to keep moving on because we have more reports, so thank you. So who's next, Mike or
Chief. Police, maybe?
Chief Borboom? Scott?
Good evening. Make sure to turn that on. All right. So first I'll go over our organizational chart. I'm sure you know this from previous presentations, but we have a deputy chief that really oversees day-to-day operations, including all hiring and training, policy development, accountability. Our other division is patrol services, which is our biggest division. It's where there's about, of our 65 sworn strength, there's 47 of our officers and sergeants and other staff in patrol, so it's the largest division. Those are the folks that wear a uniform that work pretty much 24/7. And then the remaining are in the detective or support services division. Detectives, we have 2 people at Minnetonka High School. We have 1 person assigned to the Drug Task Force office. And we have 2 folks assigned to Ridgedale that work out of Ridgedale. And then we have a partnership with the Secret Service on electronics crimes work group. And that detective works out of downtown Minneapolis. Getting into some of our key measures, these are some data points that we've been collecting probably over the last decade. We did add mental health and training hours here probably in the last few years. But for the most part, I'm going to highlight a couple of them. One is we took a little decrease. We got to pick up our community survey satisfaction. A little disappointed that we went to 96. We're going to go for 97 next year, working on that. Calls for service, as you would expect, has continued to go up. Type A and Type B criminal offenses. Those are your Type A are like burglary, assault, robbery, higher, more person crime, and Type B is more property crime. And you can see as we report consistently, relatively flat over the years, and so we're a very safe community, period. And so. But a couple things I'm sure that have come up in the past. I just want to highlight as we stop there for a second, like theft for motor vehicle, auto theft, and burglary. We have turned the corner on that. Down in our 2024 annual report just went live today, so there's a lot of information. There's like 18 pages, so feel free to go online to see more detail on anything I talk about here. But that's important. I think you're seeing in the news with even Minneapolis and other jurisdictions that is dropping, and I can contribute a part of that towards there's more of targeted enforcement, and so we have an auto theft detective that works with Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and they've done details, and I think over the last probably 8 months they've done 4 of them. So that's a detail as they go out for about 8 or 10 hours and specifically seek out stolen vehicles, those that are engaged in that behavior. And just with those 4 details alone, they recovered 40 stolen vehicles, 15 guns. And while it's there's a lot of work that's happening in other parts of the metro, these folks are still coming out into the suburbs, and so that's probably the biggest impact has been more direct, targeted enforcement on folks that they've identified are the frequent flyers, and so that's causing these numbers to drop. And it's not just here in Minnetonka. Medicals, we still respond to medicals. We are the primary responder, and then fire will assist us on significant medicals like cardiac arrest, stroke, breathing, and when we're not available. And so obviously it's something in our public safety study that was called out. At some point, we're going to hand the baton to fire as they bring on more personnel. It does free up our time because then we're not duplicating these efforts by having police respond, fire respond, and then EMS. That's a lot of resources, and so I think we're getting close as they bring on more firefighters. Traffic stops have, we've done, it's the #1 complaint in the city, and so really pushing that out to our officers, get out there. And as you'll see, traffic stops are roughly 6,400, and less than 1,000 are traffic citations. So we do a lot of education. There are times when someone is going to get a ticket, but that number is relatively low compared to how many stops we're making. Mental health continues to rise, And then in 2024, there was a big jump, and that is because if you recall last year, we required everybody to be trained in crisis intervention training. That was a 40-hour class. And so now everybody in the department has received that training in 2024. So now we're going to get back to more of the realistic training hours that what we would expect. Some highlights, not necessarily a highlight, but certainly a significant event for the police department is we had a sergeant who had passed away from cancer, left a huge void in our agency, was just an excellent mentor, a training officer. I mean, he did everything and did it well, and so that was a huge void for us, and a significant event that we dealt with here in the police department. And then kind of because of that, there was the legacy of Ryan, and so we created this Spirit of the Police Department Award. And then we've been doing a lot of more internal focused work we've had a lot of hiring. In fact, in the last 2 years, we've hired 13 officers. We currently have 7 vacancies, and so that's a pretty big turnover. In our sergeants group, we have a total of 12 sergeants, and 8 of those sergeants have less than 2 years. And then we had a captain that was promoted. And so a lot of the work we do is kind of around that when you have a lot of turnover. We've been working on insights discovery, trying to make sure that group knows how to work together, and that's really important, especially with the amount of influence they have on our people. And so we want to make sure that there's some alignment and consistency with all these new folks. And so that's really important. Our professional standards sergeant has been very busy making sure that we implement best practices, we have the latest policies, and making sure not only do we have the policies, we're adhering to these policies. And so that takes a lot of effort. We review all our body camera footage, we do audits, we make sure, we just do random checks, watching how our officers interact. Because as I noted before, we have a 1%, we got to increase that 96 to 97, so we want to make sure we cover everything we can. Police Academy, that was something we hosted here. It's a 9-week academy. We had about 40-some residents that participated. Always a fun opportunity for us. And then we brought on our own social worker, and I'll speak a little bit more about that as I get into the mental health, but that has been huge for us because it allowed us to really redefine the job description and look beyond just the aftercare and what we've been doing for years. Some challenges, and I think it was kind of mentioned over with admin, is that we have fairly good floor space, but we didn't maximize each of the space we have. And so now we're finding ourselves put new furniture in there, or take, where we had 2 cubicles, now we're putting 4 in. We've done some things because we've kind of changed the staffing model and we've added some people. And so because of that, we've had to just look at space a little differently, because we're kind of squeezing people in, and they're getting cozy. But it's actually working well. It just unfortunately it costs money when you do that, and surprisingly, I'm actually shocked at how much it costs to do that. And then as with this technology changes, and so we're really trying to become more efficient with our technology, and it's great. And our officers and the morale when they see new technology, like we have new Axon, the body cameras, and the squad cameras, and our tasers and our handguns. We have everything talks to each other, so we have these Bluetooths connecting, but you have to learn how to use all these tools where, if I remove my gun from my holster, it sets off everybody's camera, and then afterwards it all kind of collects it in one place. All that comes with training, and then training in the new equipment. We have this new VR headset, which you put it on and it's scenarios. And in fact, we had the Hopkins High School, our MAC program, come in, and they participated with the VR headsets. And I was talking to Jason, he said that was the best thing that they've ever experienced, just going through that, because it puts people in position to see what the officers will do. And so we're going through that as well, and it takes a lot of time. And then with all these new hires, every new officer takes about 18 weeks with a training officer. And so our training officers are, especially if you have somebody who's maybe struggling a little bit, it's a lot of work when you're working with somebody for 12 hours in a car. And it's you know, burnout, we want to make sure that they don't get burned out, and, but we also, you know, need folks to be trained to a pretty important level. And then, as I'm sure everybody in here has mentioned, the cost of maintaining technology and the equipment cost, it doesn't get cheaper with time. And so that's something that we're paying attention to. And then ultimately, when you have this many new sergeants and new officers, we're a very young department. And so, you know, it's not like you get a call where they'll say, okay, I want somebody with 15 years of experience to respond. We have a shift that may have, everybody has less than 2 years on. And, you know, they have to respond as if they have the experience of a 25-year officer. And so that's not always easy, but I think they're doing a really good job with that. Some goals and some innovations, and so I'm going to kind of back up and maybe expand on the first one beyond our community engagement efforts, just because Councilmember Coakley had asked about Olivia. And so just to back up a little bit, our public safety study that we did called for 2 community engagement officers. And what we did is each year when we look at that, we try to see if we need to pivot or be flexible, because they're very expensive to add officers. Officers are not cheap. I know that. We have to outfit them with equipment, and sometimes each officer is a chance for give me another headache, but besides the point. And so what we did is we looked at other opportunities, and I knew other cities were working with Hennepin County in partnership to bring in somebody to kind of fill that role, to do outreach efforts. And so what we did is we brought in, Olivia was one of those that eventually came in to work with us. And what I found during her short time here is we have a very strong presence in the city with Jace and the team that he is, well, he does it alone. And he's going to get a team because he needs a team. But we needed, it seemed like there was some duplication of efforts. And what was happening is I would have Olivia represent police, and then Jace would be there as well. Well, it was very clear to me that I needed an officer in uniform to make those connections. She did a phenomenal job, but she's not a police officer. So what we did is we decided to pivot and have an officer in the role to work closely with Jace and his team, but then we're also going to bring on a second one. And you know, if you know Eliana well, she's from Hopkins. She was a newer officer who did this work at Hopkins. So she's going to fill that role immediately. And then Officer Justin Johnson is going to step in January or first quarter to also fill that role. So we're able to really be intentional about the work that we do, because to connect with kids and you know, in our community, sometimes you need that person in uniform to make that connection. It just has to be the right person. And right now I've got 2 outstanding people that are really interested in doing that. So, and really it's going to then augment what Jace does at the city. So we're all like in alignment, because a lot of this work has fallen under Jace. And I think this will actually make the work that we do more meaningful. Yes.
I had a question. When we first approved, I guess, another employee, at the time, it seemed like it was under the assumption that it'd be more like a community engagement person, but now it sounds like we kind of made it into an officer. So it seems like to me that instead we're not getting really a community engagement person, we're getting another officer to take the place of an engagement person. And so that feels a little different than what we originally spoke of when we agreed to hire another person.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that actually, so what was happening is, and when I met with the organizer who kind of oversees the program at Hennepin County, what we discovered, if you're a city that lacks the presence of like a DEI coordinator at the city, then you need somebody strong like from the county, like what Olivia did. If you have a strong presence at the city, like what Jace does, then Jace is technically the one going to make those connections on our behalf, and then we're going to be with him to fulfill that need also. So we're kind of working closely with him, And as his team starts to grow, instead of having two people doing the same work, we're going to align ourselves and work under the city umbrella. And so we really didn't add an officer. We actually just took, we never, the partnership with Olivia was a split with us and the county. And then we actually rolled that community engagement officer into patrol instead of adding somebody. So the ask would be next year is for the extension of that with Justin to fill that role as well. So the actual addition is coming before the council for consideration in our budget for next year. But you're right, you did the agreement that was with the county did fit that role. It just seemed to me that what Jace was doing is what Olivia was doing.
Right.
And we were missing, and we were gonna supplement that with officers that were like community engagement unit. But because we've been short, I often found that it was Jace and Olivia doing the work, and we didn't have our staff there to supplement and be that presence. So really what it is Jace and his team, as he grows his team, they will be making those connections that we need their help. And then our officers, Justin or Eliana, will be that as that presence for police.
Okay.
So that's kind of what happened there.
Okay.
Jace is just too good.
We-
I'll be honest with you. I sat on meetings, and he pretty much was the running the show, and that's when it clicked on me that we need to fall in line with the work that he does, and make sure we're in alignment. And I need to support with some staff to really help him. And so we're actually doubling down. I actually think we're actually be more intentional, and the work we're going to do is going to be more. I think it's going to be it's because I know how his work is being done. It's pretty remarkable.
Hi, Scott.
And then as we look at our public safety study, we're not always trying to, personnel are not always the answer, and so where can we find efficiencies without hiring people that are consistent? And so we're just looking at, we do have what we call as a real-time crime center. We do a lot with intelligence and making sure that we direct our officers to the right place at the right time, and we're not just driving around. And so that's something that we already have in place, but we're really looking at enhancing that, looking at what that looks like. And, mostly it has to do with space and some technology. If you're familiar with our Axon Draft 1 is our AI reporting that we received. We're going to be going into the pilot stage of that right now with a limited number of people on like low-level crimes that really there's no arrest. We want to make sure our partners with the legal team and it meets their satisfaction, because with AI, there's obviously some concerns, and so we're starting that as a pilot right now, but full implementation will be efficient. And then we're just starting to look at what else is kind of up and coming, and drones for first responders is very new. It's not here in Minnesota, but really what it does, it positions these like nests, and when a call comes in, the dispatch of a lost child or a fire, or that drone is sent immediately to that area within a minute and a half and providing real-time information to us. So we're looking at ways to be just more efficient, and so we know technology changes a lot, but we're just trying to find ways, can we implement technology in lieu of police officers, people. And that kind of goes in with our alternative mental health response as the fire department starts to staff up. With Kelly's position, just preliminarily, we're looking at can we partner with some local universities and colleges that have students that want to be social workers, and they want to come under her leadership and her supervision be interns, and we can partner them with firefighters who are already on duty that we already have working. And so the public safety calls out a mental health unit of police officers. Well, it's my intent to see if we can actually move those dollars towards firefighters that are already here, and then we supplement them with social workers who are up and coming, or something like that. So our goal is to have this implemented by next year. And so Kelly right now is just working out what does that look like, what kind of training, how does it impact the fire department, and things like that. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We also recognize that we can never have a 24/7 like group that are on doing that work, so we always have to make sure our officers have some level of proficiency in training when they're dealing with folks in crisis. And then in addition to that, if there's any indication of a weapon or a threat, the alternative response will not happen. It'll be by police anyway. So we have to make sure we still have that as a consideration. Axon RMS implementation, that's another kind of, as Mr. Funk had mentioned with Logis, our records management system has been pretty much stagnant forever. And so that's built into what we had purchased last year. And so we'll have our own RMS system that'll be implemented next year, and that'll be a big undertaking for us to do it, just to transfer all our records over. Grants impacted by the federal government. We have some significant grants out there, but when we looked at any impact, as you can see, the one that we were paying attention to, that we actually we saw the RFP come out and we were going to apply for it, and then we went back in to apply for it, and guess what? It was gone.
Yeah.
So that one's not there, but that was going to help us create this mental health response and pay for some of those costs. DWI Traffic Safety Officer, that travels through the federal government, through NHTSA, and through the state, I should say. From NHTSA, that is a position that's in the public safety study for a traffic officer. This is currently being funded through this grant, so we'll have to monitor to see what happens there. Yep. And then the UASI grant, we really don't have anything for that, but what we do is that we apply for that grant if we have a need for like we asked for a drone. We can apply for that. It's administered through Hennepin County, but it comes through FEMA, and there's no more applications for this year. The rest of those, we currently have those grants, but we don't see any impact to those. And that is it for mine. Any questions?
Thanks, Scott. Any questions for Scott? I think we asked some as we went along, but any others? Anyone? All right. Thanks a lot. A lot going on. Appreciate it. Will, you next? Oops.
PR, ABC.
PU.
I thought this was alphabetical. I guess I.
Okay. Kelly, sorry about that. I'm just watching people grab the clicker.
I thought we were in alphabetical order. We
okay.
aren't,
All right.
I guess.
All right.
Recreation. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Recreation Department has 33 full-time staff members over 6 divisions. 3 of the divisions are our 3 big facilities, so the Marsh, the Williston Center, and the Ice Arena. Our admin division oversees marketing, communication. We publish 3 brochures per year. They also administer our special events, so Summer Festival, Kids Fest, things like that. Recreation division, so the programming division, we've got programming from folks who are ages 6 months all the way to 100 plus years old, so they're very busy. And then the last division is our community facilities division, so the office out of the community center oversee the community center as well as some other facilities, including Grays Bay Marina, Glen Lake Activity Center. It also houses our senior services program. Some of the key measures from 2025, I'll start in the top left. So youth scholarships, in the past 3 years, we have approved an average of 80 per year. Those scholarships are geared for youth that live in Hopkins or Minnetonka. The value for each scholarship is $100, so that shows the $8,000 value. I was trying to think about the last time we've denied a scholarship, and I cannot remember when we have. So we're in good shape with our scholarship fund. We raise funds throughout the year to support that, and we have not denied a scholarship in many, many years. 2 highest uses for those would be youth soccer and swimming lessons. The Marsh was busy this past year. I think we're actually up to almost 7,000 members right now. So very busy at the Marsh. We have another 1,000 or so that take advantage of the Marsh and Williston Center membership. And with that number rising, that means that revenues are increasing as well. So the numbers for membership specifically and fitness have gone up dramatically over the past year. Williston Center has been busy as well. I think that was one of the things that we were maybe nervous about when we took on the Marsh, was what was going to happen to Williston. And Williston has stayed really consistent. Williston has over 10,000 members, which is very, very busy. 275,000 visits per year. So that's, 900 to 1,000 a day. In the winter, it's more like 1,200 to 1,400. So when you think about how busy that, a lot of people coming through the doors at Williston. From the top right, our adult sports teams have really, I would say, increased over the past 3 years. We have over 500 teams. You know, adult volleyball is the one that seems to be growing the most lately. We've got some outdoor sand volleyball leagues that have really expanded. And then our special events attendance. So over 11,000 people have attended our special events, Summerfest, Kids Fest, Burwell Spooktacular, some to name a few. You know, it really depends on the weather, but we've had some pretty good weather. We've dodged a few storms, things like that. Especially Kids Fest, the last 2 years, it's been, you know, like 50 degrees in February, and so people are definitely coming out, and I think very, very appreciative of the events that are free, too. I think we hear that quite a bit.
Yep.
Some highlights from 2024. Williston had a good year. I talked a little bit about that. You know, Darren's got to run the official numbers year end, but we're anticipating, you know, about $300,000 exceeding, you know, revenues exceeding expenditures. So that's a good thing. It's classified as an enterprise fund, which means it's covering its operation. But when we come back and look at our capital, those capital items, the treadmills, the HVAC units, that comes out of the Williston fund. That's not a tax levied fund. That's the Williston Center fund. So we're really proud of that. The Marsh, you know, memberships are up, you know, 30 to 40% from 2023. Like I said, we're almost 7,000 members just at the Marsh. We did bring on 2 new staff members, a fitness manager, and a program and special events coordinator. So if you remember when we took on the Marsh in 2023, we kind of piecemealed it together. We had, you know, 4 or 5 interim positions, a lot of part-time staff members. We contracted some things, and so now we're bringing on a few new staff members, which has really helped operations over there. I mentioned, you know, membership bringing in quite a bit of money, but the personal training revenue just in 2024 at the Marsh was $140,000. So we're definitely seeing a lot of folks over there that want that type of service, which is definitely more than the Williston Center. And then the last highlight from 2024 would be our sauna in the Parks program. So that's the picture on the top right. That's our sauna. We had over 2,000 reservations, and I know some of you have been out there. It's an amazing program. It's been on the news. I know we've had videos. It seems like my face is showing up in the videos. I don't know why that's happening. But,
Not just your face.
I don't know that that's driving it or not. Anyway, so.
It's a little too much information for a Monday night.
Every time I turn around, I'm like, am I going to be in there or not? And I am. So with those reservations, though, you know, we want it to be affordable to people, but we're also bringing in a pretty good chunk of money, too. So $70,000 in revenue for the sauna in the park.
Season, right?
That's cool.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's incredible.
Wow.
So the ROI on that is?
Yeah, you know, we were planning, you know, we bought the sauna. You know, I told Darren, I asked Darren if we could buy that. The plan was to pay that back in 2 years, and we're on pace to do that. So, yeah. Some of the challenges, funding for facility improvements, we talked about that at a study session last year. We're going to come back and talk about that again in May, so I'm not going to dig into that deep, but you know, we have some older facilities, which leads to kind of point number 2, the costs of those facilities and the maintenance of those. You know, we're balancing those, which is difficult, and so we know there's some big ticket items out there, and we know we have to talk through that and work through that and figure out the best way forward, and we'll plan to do that here when we come back in May, and hopefully we can come up with a good plan. And as others mentioned, seasonal staffing, or staffing in general, for us, seasonal staffing has been a challenge over the years. I think it was 3 years ago when the lifeguard shortage really hit us. Lifeguards have actually come back. We are not having any issues finding staff members at Shady Oak Beach, but we still have a lot of other park programs that we're still looking for folks. So the seasonal staffing, we hire anywhere between, you know, depending on the season, 250 to 350 staff members. So that's a lot of folks that come in. We just presented to the DEI Commission and talked about the makeup of our seasonal staff, which was interesting because most people think it's high school and college age. We had over 20% of our folks were 55 plus. So you just don't think about that, but we have a lot of people who either maybe just retired and want some part-time work. A lot of our adult sports or softball instructor or softball officials are people who are 55 plus. So that's an interesting fact. Some goals for 2026, we have a recreation app coming. So on your phone, we're really excited about this as an app. This will help with a number of things within our department. Number 1, a facility check-in. So we have 3 facilities that have a membership. So Williston, the Marsh, and Shady Oak Beach. So instead of having a membership card, you'll just be able to use your app and scan in at those facilities. Program registration, you think about the number of calls that we have the day before summer registration. I can't get into my account, I forgot my password, you know, all that. If you have the app, it's one of those facial recognition things. Once you're in your phone, you're in. So you hopefully that will reduce the number of calls. You can then, it should be much, much easier to register for programs through the new app. Again, getting on your account, and then marketing. We're going to work closely with our communications division with the app. We have such great opportunity to market our events, our programs, our facilities, so we're really excited about that. A couple other things for 26, Rink B refrigeration. We had put that on hold 2 years ago, hoping to do that in 2026. The sauna and beach improvements, you know, with the amount of interest we had in sauna in the parks, we want to just make sure that we continue to maintain that and enhance that experience for our users. A big thing for us with the farmers market. So relocating the farmers market, that was a tough decision. We had that market here at City Campus along with music in the park. Moved it out to Ridgedale Commons, which is an amazing park, an amazing setting, but people were not coming. The attendance was down probably anywhere from 40 to 50%.
Really?
So, so we heard that, and you know, we did evaluate that. People were telling us that, and so we are going to try to do it in the Marsh parking lot starting this year. One of the main, one of the things that we heard most about when we had it on City Campus was it was hidden down by the amphitheater, but now that we have an opportunity to put it right on Minnetonka Boulevard, on the east parking lot of the Marsh, we're excited about that opportunity. So now we are still trying to backfill more programming out at Ridgedale Commons because we know that's an amazing park. We've seen more rentals out there, and we want to make sure that is still vibrant. But people weren't coming out there, and it was really interesting to hear that. I was surprised by that. But we wanted to be nimble. We're trying to, you know, go where the people are and where they want to be. So that is a change that will happen here this year. I mentioned facilities. And then lastly, we do apply for, you know, a number of grants. Most of the grants that we apply for are through Hennepin County and or our professional organizations, so we don't have any federal ties to the grants that we apply for. So it's the Hennepin County Youth Sports grants that are the ones that we apply for most. Trying to get us back on track.
All right, I appreciate it. We did a nice job, Kelly. Any question for Kelly?
No, I was just thinking that the Marsh or the Civic Campus it's more centrally located. It's kind of more in the middle. Ridgedale's kind of the northeast corner, and maybe it's just, you know, just doesn't seem as far.
Yeah, I agree. It's more centrally located. People were somewhat nervous about driving to Ridgedale. I think we heard that. I know.
It's only 2.5, or it's only 1.2 million that do it every month, but.
No, I know. So we're
no, but I get it. I get it.
Attendance, and so.
Well, and you look at the demographics and the psychographics of farmers market attendee. It may be different than a serious mall shopper. So, but the other thing, it was interesting because I've been to the farmers market at Ridgedale Commons, and I think the vendors really liked it. You surprised me when you told me that the numbers were down. But I also think that there's synergy between the farmers market and music in the park. And I think by having those two close together, I think there's a benefit there, because I know that there are people who go to the farmers market kind of late, and the food truck and thing, and then the music in the park, and it's just a nice extension.
Agreed.
So anyway, well, I wish you well. Those are all great programs, and thanks for your report.
We'll do a rain dance for money for all the things at the Marsh.
Sounds good.
Among other things.
Make it rain.
All right. Let's see who's next. Is it?
The slides will tell. Public Works.
Here we are. Legal.
You're up.
Well, then get his slides
What,
in.
3 weeks in, 2 weeks in?
All right, Eric, we're looking forward to this.
No pressure.
It's new for me to still be engaged in adult conversation on a
At this time?
point, so
Okay.
if I-
Well, I hope you're not past your bedtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forgive me. All right. So, all right, here is you'll hear me say a lot, is our small but mighty legal office and legal staff. There are 3 attorneys and 4 support staff. One of the support staff is our legally required victim witness liaison, Rachel Daniels, who I thought did a great job at State.
She did. That was very interesting.
It was great. The story of our office, of course, is turnover right now. An office that has really, I think, historic tenure on both the civil and criminal sides. 2/3 of the attorneys are turning over. So Rolf is retiring in May. He's listed there as the associate city attorney. It's really the deputy city attorney function that he's been performing. Anna has now been officially named the deputy city attorney. And so she's assuming
excellent.
that role. Yep, which is wonderful. And then we are backfilling Anna, and we're in the midst of that interview process right now. We didn't get I don't have a good context for historic numbers, obviously, and the office hasn't had to do hiring, but it wasn't a large number of applicants, but the quality was really good. And we've got 2 really good finalists right now.
Excellent.
Still interviewed, so. 2025 budget key measures. The top 4 lines are criminal law related, and the remaining are civil. One of the interesting things is we've historically received the suburban statistical overview from the court systems in February each year, which guides these numbers, and we haven't received that this year. Everybody is waiting for it. There's a big delay. That is the one set of statistics that allows us to compare apples to apples with other municipal in-house prosecution offices to determine if our staffing ratio is in line with the number of cases. The story of the criminal caseload is that it's up to historic levels. So the one line we can know with definitive knowledge is the 2024 actual number of cases opened and processed by staff, and that is an all-time high for the office.
Wow,
It's never
yeah.
been that high. We could all surmise a bunch of reasons, potential reasons for that. It's hard to say. I think if we're looking at estimated and projected numbers going forward, no surprise, a prosecution function will often track somewhat with your law enforcement personnel numbers, and both state patrol and police are bringing on additional personnel, and we can anticipate that our case volume will go up correspondingly. The last 3 lines are civil measures. Civil law practice in a government setting is a real conundrum to come up with any sort of quantitative measure. It doesn't lend itself to that. It's really qualitative work. It's work that's done in support of the rest of the enterprise. And so if the city is doing well and the enterprise is doing well, the legal underpinnings are typically there, and that's the good work. So this is something that I actually also did in Minneapolis, which is base it more on customer satisfaction, customer being our clients, which is everybody in the city, yourselves included, department heads, and staff. And then we also include a satisfaction measure with the Charter Commission, which I staff as well. This again is just trying to reconcile. We're talking to Rolf a lot today. We're trying to just figure out numbers that would actually be meaningful, and without the suburban statistical overview, we're kind of going a little bit with projection here. So this gives you another idea of some of those projections. One thing you'll note is the sort of the big areas of the criminal case volume are DWI, domestic, and theft. And as staffing numbers increase in our law enforcement partners, you will see DWI numbers go up, because that is a fact of life, that if you're out in the field more, you will find those cases. Domestic cases don't typically track staffing. There is kind of a, unfortunately, just a consistent number that are there. So you see, that's why that number we projected to remain the same. 2024 department highlights, these have been mentioned, and that is no surprise. As I mentioned, the legal staff on the civil side really functions in support of the enterprise. So successes by other departments or by the city enterprise also can be attributed to the legal work. So the LEP plan that Corinne led on is one of the big ones. A lot of our contractual drafting and review I'm quickly realizing is a big area of focus. And then again, repeat, staff opened the greatest number of criminal cases in recorded legal department history. So as you can imagine, a lot of the evidence and the work of criminal prosecution has gone into a digital format. So we have a lot of staff time that's geared towards the review of body-worn camera video and squad video. And the court system, Hennepin County courts at least, have implemented a digital exhibit system at the end of last year downtown for criminal cases. And so we're also having our staff have to enter in all of this digital evidence into the computer systems in advance. It makes the court process when you get there more streamlined, but is a ton more front-end work that most prosecution offices aren't historically used to. Noting the transitional period, again, 2/3 of the attorney staff are turning over. And so we're going to be working through that onboarding this year and getting acquainted. And as you can imagine, you have a criminal team of 2 prosecutors who have been a tandem. They've been a
Right.
dynamic duo for all these years. 19 years for Anna, so they've worked together for that long. Ralph's had a 30-plus year tenure.
You haven't told Ralph that he can't retire yet?
I know.
Yeah,
That's what I
you
feel.
haven't
I
done
know,
that yet?
I know. It's
I
too
thought
late.
Mike had that at the top of your list.
I know. I just enjoy having him around. I love talking to him, so it's like, I don't want him to leave on a personal level either. Bringing on a new person will be a challenge. I mean, they're just so used to almost, it's an unspoken way they kind of back each other up
Sure.
unnoticed and cover for each other, and so that's going to be very new and a definite challenge. And then with civil work, you always, areas I might be proficient in or have some knowledge in are going to be different than Corinne's. And she was an amazing lawyer, but had some definite expertise areas that I perhaps don't have. And so it's me learning those areas and doing that work where I can, and then by that same token, trying to minimize our use of outside counsel, legal assistance.
Yep.
I'm learning that there is a vast network out there that I can avail myself of, though, both a network that I've created through my tenure as a lawyer, but also through the League of Minnesota Cities and friends who are also city attorneys in some of the suburban communities. We do not receive any federal funds, I'm glad to say, and so we don't have any implications there. Again, we're going to be keeping an eye on the prosecution numbers and getting a better idea when that suburban analysis comes out to see where we stand in relation to our suburban colleagues. That is something that we do need to keep an eye on for the future in terms of staffing, whether it's an additional attorney or a paralegal, somebody that can do a lot of the functions that might bring that along. I mentioned the digital exhibit system and all the inputs that are required there. And then we also have the continued adjustment with the police to the Axon system, which is the body-worn camera.
All right.
Questions?
Well, thank you. Welcome. Good to hear your first report.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Council questions for Eric? Yeah.
I don't know
Kizzy.
if this will impact your department, but there's like a new, I guess, it's not a commission, but it's like a new department where they're going to be expunging the marijuana
The
cases.
cannabis, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I'm just wondering, do you think that's, because it's like 950,000 cases, so I'm wondering, is that going to impact the workload for our city?
Right. That's interesting. There's actually, it's a former Minneapolis city attorney who leads now the expungement office. Jim Router leads the expungement office there. The prosecutors do have a role in expungement, but my understanding is a lot of that is going to be handled sort of automatically based on certain categories of offense, but I can certainly get some detail on that for you and get back to you.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I know like the job is going to be where there's going to be paralegals going through the different cases, but if there's a charge that's tied to like just if it's not just cannabis, then it may get like appealed, or maybe you might say, well, I don't agree with this case being expunged. So
Right.
I would imagine there's going to be a lot of cases like that, and I'm wondering like if the cases are going to be like that, how many will we be looking at as a city to object those cases?
Yep.
So
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd be happy to get info on that for you.
just curious.
Just a brief comment. I mean, the evidence piece, the trial evidence and exhibit piece, to me sounds like a big problem and a need for a paralegal, as much as I hate to say it, but I can tell my colleagues that that's like a very big deal, and it is a lot of work. And so, I'd hate to see the work compromised and, the evidence lacking because you don't upload it, you're kind of in trouble.
Right. It is a definite area of increased front-end work. Had a conversation with the Bloomington city attorney this week, and Bloomington is actually, they've got a larger staff, but they're loading in all their evidence at the earliest possible appearance. Right now, the way the system is set up by Hennepin County courts is they're only requiring it once you get to a certain stage of the criminal proceeding. It's post-arraignment. and definitely before trial, but there's a later period where it's required. The anticipation is they're going to keep moving that up earlier in the process, and so Bloomington is putting everything in right now, even though they don't have to. I think they think there are certain advantages to doing that for their staff and their prosecutors. We wouldn't have the capacity to do that right now.
Keep us posted on that, that's a big deal.
Yep.
And I would just quickly add to that, when we come back in May for our budget kickoff, we'll talk a little bit about our people plan. Miranda Dahmen, as our assistant city manager, working with our directors on a 5-year, what we're calling a people plan. So think of your CIP, but for our staffing. And so we've identified in legal, just to your point, Rebecca, about needing paralegals. So we're building in a paralegal position into our people plan. So we're projecting additional assistance for legal.
All right. Public Works. We finally got there. Will.
I think it might have something to do with me getting done kind of late, so that might be why I'm up.
All right, that all works for us. This isn't this isn't confession.
So I'll move pretty quick. Public Works, we've got 84 full-time folks, but not only do we have our full-time employees, we've got 20 to 30 seasonals on top of that, as well as we have 3 ICWC crews. We have up to 8 interns. We work with the Green Corps, the Climate Corps. We do have 8 to 10 Hennepin County folks working on the Public Works shop. And then in addition to all these employees, we also have a number of extensions with our contractors, our vendors, and our consultants. So that's in addition to the folks that are full-time at the city. We have a lot of key measures. I did try to highlight some of the really important ones. We do a lot of project notifications. In the past 2 years, we've reached up to 50,000 notifications, so those are emails and newsletters. Mostly emails, text, different methods that we use. We have a lot of volunteer hours in our Natural Resources Department. Ash trees, I know Josh mentioned at the State of the City. That's a huge deal for us. Right now it's peaking, it's going to continue to peak, so this is just the city piece of it. Our facility folks, they're looking at greater than 3,000 work orders every year, so they're busy every day. Our maintenance folks are busy as well. There's a lot of miles of recon and refurbishment. Our trails, which we'll talk about later, we've got another project this year on the Title Boulevard. We maintain more sidewalks and trails than we have, so we have around 105 that we own at the city, but we also do work for other jurisdictions. Kind of wanted to highlight the water pumps. So we pump around 2.1 billion with a B gallons of water. It's a lot of water. I put the graph in here too, though. So in the last 20 years, we've reduced that amount by $1 billion for the B again. And so with water conservation, it's really continued to go down and down, which is great. But we average around 4 million gallons a day of usage at the city, depending on peaks, goes up or down. We get out, do a lot of sewer inspections, 300 inspections, and then our fleet, they manage around 3,000 different repairs and work orders a year as well. Some of our highlights, so our main highlight, we're always running our city core services for drinking water, sanitation, utility, streets, stormwater facilities, and then parks and trails. And so those are our core services at Public Works. Won't read all the numbers to you. We have over 300 miles and 250 miles of streets as part of that. Matt's here tonight. He's working on our park habitat restoration plan and the off-leash dog strategy as well, which you're familiar with. Phil's here. Phil Olson, our city engineer. Our Hoskins Crossroad Trail was completed in 2024. We did receive a relief grant, which you've all seen, working on assisting residents with Emerald Ash Borer so that'll continue. Last year, our street maintenance department paved more than they've ever done in-house. And so they did around 24 lane miles, which is a lot for them as a crew. Internally, we've been consulting that work out. Our water meter replacement, which Darren had mentioned earlier, we completed our lead service line inventory for the EPA just to check how things are looking in the city, and then we recently saw our first rooftop solar as well as our ground array. Challenges, we're just continuing to balance our resources like everyone. Our Emerald Ash Borer as well is huge. It's peaking, as I mentioned. Julie had mentioned the cost of projects. You know, the cost is not going down on anything, and so we're continuing to manage that as much as we can. Regulation as well for watershed, county, and state continues, things that are constantly looking at, and we're always balancing our decision-making with a number of different factors.
Well, going back to that
We hate
picture,
to ask, but what is that?
are those flushable wipes there?
They are flushable.
You know, that's, flushable. You know, I was concerned that that's what they were, because every time I walk through Costco, it really irritates me when I see them selling flushable wipes that are not flushable. Well, they're flushable, they just don't go through the pumps.
Yeah, they get stuck in the pump, which is what that picture is. And so that's a lift station pump, those are flushable wipes. We have to pull the pumps all the time and clean out the flushable wipes, so.
It's a real source of irritation.
Yeah.
Right.
So don't use flushable wipes if you can help it.
Just throw them in the garbage.
And don't use non-flushable ones either.
Compostable ones. They have compostable ones.
Yeah, maybe.
Err on the side of
Which is better than.
Just our goals and
Let's
our
talk about it
innovations.
some more.
Our water meters will continue. We did around 700 last year start. We don't do those in the winter, only because if there's any complications, we're to place a meter, we don't want to run into frozen situations. You know, if we were to have to shut down the water, so we'll start that back up. Minnetonka Trail is going to start up with power line burial here shortly, partnering with Hennepin County. One of the things we'll really look at this year is our GIS-based systems. So our Natural Resources Department and Forestry, as well as engineering, are looking at right-of-way management options through those systems, as well as some of our park information. Our GIS is heavy in utilities right now, so we use it all the time for utilities. Got our whole system available on an iPad in the field, but we're going to continue to branch out in different areas. And then we'll still continue to look at energy conservation, and then some of our solar that I had mentioned before with all other projects. Federal funding, same as others have mentioned, it primarily affects us if we apply for grant application. So we'll just continue to look at opportunities as they come up. There's nothing right now that we're seeing that's gone away at this point, but certainly could change as the opportunity is.
It's dynamic.
It is dynamic, yes. You know, some of the applications are managed through other branches, so federal money passes through those other branches. And I went kind of quick, but any questions?
Oh, thanks.
Any
Any questions for Will? We appreciate quick, but,
Very engineering.
Yeah,
yes.
thank you.
All right, any questions for Will? All good? All right, I think we're done with director presentations, correct? Or am I missing
Yeah,
something?
we are done. Yeah, we are done. I'll just conclude by saying that thank you, council, for allowing staff here this evening to present. Here I thought an hour, 20 minutes, but it's, I guess we've miscalculated the volume of information that was being presented tonight. But I think hopefully you find it valuable in the
Yeah.
sense of, as I teed it up, taking a look at not only what we did in 2024, again, you've heard of looking ahead in 2025, some of the challenges that have been outlined. Again, I'm just really proud of our team. I think, I'm going to say we've got a great team here. I think that goes without saying, that are professional, thoughtful, deliberate, forward-thinking. I think that's really encompasses our commitment to excellence, is that we're not just reactive to today's world, that we are, as you see in these slides, really looking at the horizon and really being, again, I think really in tune with what's on the horizon and some of what those challenges look like. Because when you think about our budget, it's more than just the strategic plan, you know, how much emphasis we put on the strategic plan, but what you get a sense of tonight is, yes, there's a complete body of work around their strategic plan, and that's extremely critical work. But there's work beyond that also touches on our core services. And our core services are changing the sense of some of our budgetary pressures aren't by our own decision-making. You're sensing that it could be a decision that's made at the federal level, there could be a change at the state level, maybe legislatively, it's GASB, it's new requirements, and so we're having to adjust our own ways of doing business just based on things that are not in our control. So again, I think you see this whole body of work that is happening. I appreciate your time in this. I know we went longer than I expected, but I think it really kind of sets the foundation for the next 9 months as we come back and really kind of kick this off with in May. So with that, I know it is 8:40. I would maybe just offer this to you, Mayor and Council, that if you want to take a few minute break, We do have a discussion teed up on trails.
Yep.
If it interests you, maybe the decision you have tonight, if you want to maybe spend 30 minutes on trails tonight. Just looking ahead at Monday's agenda, I think we have a little room on Monday night's council meeting. If you want to make a business item, we could certainly present the same information Monday if you want to push that to Monday's conversation.
Yeah, I was.
So it's your call.
Well, I was going to kind of ask for a little process check here. I think we should take a 5-minute break, and then let's look and see what we can do to. You know, I mean, do you want to move something? Do we want to say, okay, let's stop here and come back? You know, I mean, the trail improvement's important. I don't think it has to be real long, but if we wanted to move that to another night, we could do that, and then do the 30 minutes of open time, and then do it that way. But I mean, council, do you have preferences? Does that work? I mean, you think we have time on Monday's calendar? I'm sure Will won't be too disappointed if we move.
I think it's probably more about Phil. So
Phil, okay, Phil.
Will will buy you lunch for coming Monday night.
Well, so now you got to come. Is that an extra night for you, Phil?
No, and Matt.
Oh, wait,
and Matt.
we then push our 30 minutes of open time. Can we adjourn and do a 30-minute study session at the end of the meeting?
I don't know that, I'm going to defer to our city attorney. I think that would be considered a special meeting, and we could do that if we need to advertise 72 hours in advance, which we could do.
Well, but couldn't you just make that? I mean, let's look at. I mean, how many times do we have an audience at the end of a meeting? Almost zero. So why don't we just make that an agenda item, the 30 minutes of open time at the end of our. Make it a business item, 14. Whatever it is going to be, and put it at the end and make it part of our regular meeting.
I think you can. I just want to. I think you can, Mayor. That's a good suggestion. I just want to double check the rules of procedure.
Yeah.
On if that is allowed under the council rules of procedure.
I think it's because it's better to use our staff that's here and let them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I mean, I'm fine. I'm indifferent, but I think we're kind of running out of time. So let's do what makes the most sense.
And I'm fine either way. I'd love to have the trail discussion now, but it doesn't.
Well, would it be easier? I mean, you tell me. You make a recommendation. I think we'll be open to it.
I think what I'm hearing, so we can cover one of those tonight. Either one
Yeah.
will be about the same amount of time. So
Yeah.
it's probably irrelevant which one do you want to do tonight, other than you do have staff here to maximize staff time.
Yeah.
I would suggest let's do the trail conversation tonight.
Okay.
I'll work with our city attorney on the best format for bringing the 30-minute open time to Monday's meeting. So either agenda item or a special meeting. Either way, we'll tee it up.
Okay, and we've got enough time because we're a week and away. Okay,
We would have to post it by Thursday.
Yeah, so we can get that decision made. So I'll tell you what, we're going to take 5 minutes right now. We can make a little bathroom stop.
Got her out there talking, but.
All right, we're going to go anyway. All right, well, we will continue. Sorry we're running so late, but I want to say everyone's reports were great. They were really well done and very informative. So they were long, but they were worth it. So thank you very much. So we've adjusted a little bit. So we're going to do the trail improvement plan. Mike, I don't know if you want to kick it off, or should I just give it to Will?
Thanks, Brad. Yeah, we'll just kick it over right over. I don't know. Phil and Will.
Phil and Will.
The ills will take care of it.
All right. The usual. We've been working on this trail stuff for a long time. The usual suspects will now take it over.
Yeah, Matt too as well.
Good to see you, Matt.
And Matt.
All right.
I'll start out. Phil's going to take over the presentation and just kind of run through, the background of the trails plan, the priorities, why the city has done things historically, and talk about 2016 and why the system came to be, and then why it's beneficial to funding opportunities and different things. And so we would like council's feedback. It's your plan. We're going to kind of run through everything. The current system does work well for us, and I do want to mention that, but certainly if the council wants to, we're absolutely open to whatever you'd like to discuss, and that's why we're here, answer questions. And so Phil will kind of run through everything, and then we'll turn it back to you. We've got one question we want to make sure you consider, and we'll throw that up first and get started unless there's anything important.
Take it away. That's good.
Just to jump in, I'm sorry, Phil, I'm just going to jump in real quick. Again, with tonight's presentation on trails, this was, again, part of what was teed up during your building of your 2025 study session work plan. So this conversation percolated up through you, and so this is not, like, kind of not, I would say not a staff-driven or led conversation. We're responding to an item that you wanted to talk about as a council, and so tonight, as Will just mentioned, we'll present to you kind of the history, why we do what we do, and then because what you're going to learn is it's very prescriptive, right? It's prescriptive, still somewhat subjective in what we do, but very prescriptive. And so if you want changes to this policy and to the way that it's done, then that's what will be direction from you on. Yeah, please go.
Yeah, so the question we have is, does council support the trail improvement plan and the trails identified in the capital improvement plan? So I'll just walk through both of those now. So just high level is the city has 102 miles, 105 if we go off of Will's presentation a minute ago, and 93 of those are included in winter maintenance. So that does include regional trails. From the trail improvement plan process, there's a lot of history here. So going back pretty heavily in the 70s, there were a lot of articles. Basically, the whole city was developed without a real good trail network. And so these articles just show there's a lot going on in the history. From a planning perspective, I think the first trail was 1971 that was put in place as a city project. So after development, trying to retrofit these in. 1973, the loop trail system, you can see some iterations there. I think the interesting thing here is the 1976 trail map, which shows a lot of those collector roads that we've recently built actual trail segments on. So 101, Shady Oak, Minnetonka Boulevard, Hopkins Crossroad, those are all shown as future proposed segments on that map that have just got done within the last 5 to 10 years. So in 2006, taking this last 2007 missing links map, a couple other versions in between there, trying to figure out how to prioritize those links so that we could start to plan for construction projects. So a group, trails team group internally in this, made up of city staff, was developed. Someone from each of the departments at the city came up with this priority system. So really the original way that trails were being completed was the easiest, cheaper segments were being done. And so these major high-use segments that everyone knew needed to be built were never on the list because they were expensive and they were hard. So this priority system, it has degree of difficulty, cost effectiveness included, but it's a very low number compared to the trails that are nature of use in community areas, which are connecting our neighborhood, city, village centers, transit-oriented schools, that type of thing. So overall, this was put together, and then each of those segments, the 71 segments that were included on the map, were then rated in a yes-no situation and came up with a score. And so on this map to the right, the red are the higher, and this is an older map, so some of these are now complete, but the higher rated segments are in red, the lower are in blue, and everywhere in between there. Then in 2018, realizing that we needed some more funding to actually start to construct those trails that came to the top, franchise fees were introduced at the council level and approved. So gas franchise fee being $4.50 per household service, and electric franchise at $1 dedicated towards trail expansion. That last year generated about $2 million in revenue for that fund. CIP pages for trail expansion and the crosswalks are developed off that number. And then the thing to note that is, over these years, the expenses are higher than the annual revenues, or sorry, the revenues from the franchise fees. And so that's been going on for a number of years. The way we've supplemented that is with grants. And so been pretty successful with the grants that have come in order to keep the projects coming in at the same time. Then last summer, June 10th, reviewed those franchise fees and kind of talked about, the rate at which trails are being built and if we should speed that up, and currently working on that. As funding allows, we're adding them in the CIP. So lots has been done since 2018 though. Not only are the trails that we've built with the trail expansion money, but also with roadway reconstruction projects, which are funded probably through street money, developments, and then other partners. So Three Rivers, for example, built a trail segment. MnDOT built a trail segment that was funded through MnDOT. So lots of different ways those are happening, using grant funding opportunities and collaboration with our partners. And then since 2018, we've had $5.9 million in grants that have gone into trail expansion. So that's a map of those segments. They're a little bit hard to read through. Basically all over town, they've popped up somehow, some way. So not only that, so moving forward, 25 to 29 CIP. Hopkins Crossroad is planned at 25. We actually accelerated that project and was constructed in 24. So the 25 project is actually just burial on Minnetonka Boulevard in advance of the 26 project, which is from the marsh to Tonkawood. Then 27, 28 is Excelsior, and we have 29 is Hopkins Crossroad. Moving forward, what we're proposing in the CIP is the same, except in 2030 we're actually not proposing to complete a project because at the end of 29 we have a deficit of $2.6 million. So really not coming into a positive fund balance until 2031. I think that these numbers might be a little bit improved by some grants that we currently have out there. And then as we develop some of these feasibilities that are going to come forward too, we'll refine the numbers. So Excelsior Boulevard, as we're working through with Hennepin County, finalizing those numbers, this number will change and probably in the positive. But right now, not proposing anything in the CIP given where the fund is at.
Given reality.
Yeah. Also is the crosswalk page. That was a new page added last year. That adds $100,000 annually for new crosswalks and upgraded crosswalks. And so one thing is that with, say, the Minnetonka Boulevard project with the Tonka Woodcroft project, there was a new crossing added at the mall. And so we did pedestrian counts last year, found that actually a lot more people used that than we're planning to. So we're actually going to be proposing to add a flashing crossing at that location. So whether that's used through this funding or we actually have some savings on Tonka Woodcroft too, we might be able to fit it in there. But just from a process standpoint, are reevaluating those crossings even after we add them in. Unfunded segments, so this is the long list of segments that we have in the CIP that were generated off of the original priorities. A closer look here, if still hard to see. In general, this is the document that we use to put together the CIP. One thing to note, I can't see it either, but let me go to my notes here. So number 18, Hillside, that did get completed out of order. That was because that was part of the Hopkins Crossroad Trail project. And so really by doing that out of order, that allowed us to apply for grant funding since it directly connected to the school. So there's a very specific reason why that was included with the project so that we could connect and then do better on the grant application. Another example where maybe we're not exactly following is number 9 was the segment completed by MnDOT. They were doing a project right at 101 and 7, and we got them to wrap that into their work. And so that was part of that. And then other examples are Baker Road is number 1 and number 2. That is a Three Rivers Park project coming up here in 2027. And at the same time, number 26 is Roland. And so that will be part of their project as well. So more or less following sequence, except where we had some opportunities to construct earlier. One other example is the Kinsel neighborhood is number 65 and 67. That project is currently proposed in the CIP under streets in 2027. So would be part of a feasibility review and analysis, and then would be constructed with street money as part of that project. Other projects, the numbers up here are correct. The ones that were in your report are a little bit off. Hennepin County is reconstructing Gleason Lake Road in 2028, and they would have a trail project with that reconstruction project. MnDOT has some work at Ridgedale Drive and Wayzata Boulevard. And then Three Rivers Park, two things, Baker Road and Hopkins Cross Road. Here's a map that shows a little bit better. So Gleason Lake is in the upper left corner, that's 28, and then the north side of Ridgedale Drive and Wayzata Boulevard is the 26 project. So pretty substantial projects that'll be happening in town. For the most part, these are not included in any kind of cost share. We might have one with MnDOT on the intersection, but for the most part, these are going to be completed without the Trail Improvement Fund. Mentioned Baker already. McGinty Road, we've been talking with Three Rivers Park for quite a while on that one. So Hennepin County is planning to repave that road in 25, and actually coming up here, I think they want to do it in May, so we'll find out their schedule soon. But Three Rivers Park is starting the planning process in 26 for that segment, and meaning that once they do that planning process, then they can start to apply for grants. And so that's the same process they used on Baker Road a number of years ago, where they went forward, did the planning process, then went out for grants, and now a couple of years later, going into construction. So I know at the time we talked about Baker Road being constructed, I think, in 18 timeframe, and it'll be constructed in 27. It's probably similar for McGinty, but it's a little bit out of our control too about how successful they are in their grant applications. One other item that we've been working on is Vine Hill Road on it's the border of Shorewood and Minnetonka. Shorewood's going to be replacing the trail on the south side of, it's a fairly long road, but the south half of that road. And then on the north end, in 2031, there's an opportunity to construct a trail on the Minnetonka side to really make that north-south connection along Shorewood, Minnetonka border, and up to the high school area. So, high level, from the trail improvement plan standpoint, having that plan, is a good way to, I guess, prioritize. It shows us, for the most part, we follow the plan. When we get requests in from residents, we, typically take some time to walk through it, but then understand the justification for why the decisions were made the way they were. And it allows us, with early coordination with other jurisdictions, really to set us up for grant funding. A lot of these grants take 4, 5, 6 years early to start to line up. Otherwise, it's difficult to start to apply for them. So we can do some early work, get the grants ready, apply for them, and then there are a couple of years beyond that. So Hopkins Cross Road, I thought we were early on. We were right on the border of that one. So, and I think we applied 3 or 4 years early on that one, if I remember right. And that is what I have. So, any other comments?
Yeah, with that, we'll just turn it back to the council and the mayor. Mike, if anybody has anything, certainly your discussion.
I'll make a quick comment and then turn it back over to the council. I think we owe these people who've been working on this for a long time, working on our trails, an answer to this question. But council, any thoughts or comments on the prioritization system, the formula, things like that?
Yeah, I actually had several questions. So, you talked about the Baker Road, and there was a neighborhood safety meeting. Patsy and I were there, and a lot of people from the county. And the neighborhood is very interested in a little trail segment, and it's in the plan is number 49, between Wyola Road and Baker Road on Orchard Road. So it's literally a little segment between the driveway on Orchard to the middle school and where
Deb, you know, let's not get too executional. Let's talk about the formula,
So-
because I mean, we all have
Brad,
every one of these
Brad,
council members
this is-
has.
I'm sorry I talked so long, but I'm just explaining that the neighborhood wants this, and I really appreciate what the order is, the priorities that we have for making the decisions. So what I'm wondering is, with something like Baker Road or like with Hopkins Cross Road, and you did the Hillside Lane, are we gonna be waiting for that? 'Cause for that little section, I mean, is that something that we could, you know, maybe incorporate in, just like you did with Hillside Lane and Hopkins Cross Road? The neighborhood wants it now because it's really, really unsafe. But I'm just wondering, I asked Mike earlier, is that something, that does sound like that's something that we do when we have these big projects coming through, and
Yeah, you know, one thing is the verifying that once that segment is added in on Baker Road, what does it do to the priority change? You know, does it adjust one way or the other to be a missing segment? I think we can look at that.
Okay.
The Hillside piece was all under the city project. So we're talking with you know, Three Rivers Park about what the scope of their work is and the crossing that's there at the school. So adding some of those components in, if it's possible, but not necessarily a standalone project. I think that would be something we take feedback on if we want to make those changes. But typically we would just re-rate it and then adjust it up or down. I would think since it's so low, it's probably not going to rise into a situation where it's funded doing it this way, so.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Brad. You know, I'm really reliant on this plan and this schedule as we have it. I will say it is my #1 communication tool. I'm sure you guys know what segment I want and my neighbors want. And it is coming up, and it would be devastating to see it pushed down the priority list. It's not even, when I say coming up, maybe 2032. But it makes sense, and people do, you know, when you explain the situation and you explain why it is the way it is. And sometimes I say, take a look at that list and go drive past those areas. And if you can articulate for me why this segment should be accelerated over these other areas, because of where it is, you know, and challenge people to say, you know, what kid do you love best, kind of a thing. It is helpful in that conversation. I wish we could accelerate all of this, but I think this was so deliberately done, and I think we've relied on it. And we want to be nimble. If something comes up, I think we can talk about the Minnetonka Boulevard swap. And we were swapping for a neighborhood too. You know, that makes a lot of sense. The neighborhood wanted the swap. It was in the same area. It was, you know, and it finished some connections to school. And, you know, those kinds of things make a lot of sense, but I think we have to be really careful about taking something that we've had in place for almost 10 years and saying, you know, well, we kind of want these other things instead. So that's my 2 cents.
Other comments, anyone?
Well, if we, I mean, I support it as well. If the question is, does the city council support the trail improvement plan? The answer is yes for me. And
Well, let's just go down and ask everyone, do they support the trail improvement plan as a consensus? Then we can make any other comments that we have. But do we all agree that this is a good methodology?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I do, because it is nimble, and you know.
It is.
And so one of my other questions was, we have this Highway 7 safety study.
Yep.
And one of the Trails is like an underpass
Mhm.
across Highway 7, and I just didn't know, how far, what is that going to do to that? How far down the road?
Well, I think there are things that can change this, as have been demonstrated in the pink section of the sheet. If all of a sudden there's money for something, it moves up the priority list. And so if it's connected to a project, if it's connected to Highway 7, and Highway 7 is not going to happen for at least 10 years, I promise you that. But at that time, if there are meaningful improvements funded by the federal government and the state government to improve Highway 7, whatever we have on this list, it can accelerate to the top. But I was going to I wanted to make a comment too, because I talked to Mike about it. And I told my wife, I said, I think looking at the plan, it looks like my favorite segment is going to happen in 2026. And then I realized, oh no, red, that was 2030 to 2032. And both Will and Phil know what my favorite segment, or my request segment is. And I haven't done anything other than lean into Three Rivers a little bit to accelerate that segment. I want to be fair. But the other thing I did was I looked at the individual pages of the plan and the criteria that put it where it is. And I had a couple questions on that. I said, well, gee, there's an asterisk here. Rather than a Y or a yes or a no, there's an asterisk. What does that mean? But then I said, who's doing the assessing? And we talk about village centers. One of the things about this segment of trail along McGinty Road, it connects to the path to downtown Wayzata. Well, based on this analysis, it looks like we don't consider downtown Wayzata as a village center. Now, it may not be a village center for Minnetonka, but in terms of the residents of Minnetonka, it's a destination. It's a place where they go for commerce and recreation and things like that. So, if I wanted to, couldn't I say, well, let me just challenge some of the yeses and nos on here in the assessments. Maybe this should be included in, if you can improve the lie, if you can play Donald Trump and kick your ball into the into the fairway, you can, you can improve your score. And I think that's legitimate. We're using the system to say, well, I've got a little different, a difference of opinion on this. Could we adjust this by looking at it a little differently? That's true to the system, but it says, maybe there's some judgment involved in how we score. And I think that's a fair, if you have your favorite project, that's a fair question to ask.
I didn't mean to imply,
No.
just because my neighbors.
No. We all have them. We all have them.
And it really wasn't that. It's that because there's
That meeting.
not just the meeting. The fact that Three Rivers is going to be putting a trail in
Right.
there, right there, just like Hopkins Crossroads was going
Right.
in, and Hillside was perpendicular to that.
Mhm.
That's why I brought it up. If we have a big project coming through.
Absolutely, and I think there are
And
opportunities
it
like
is
that.
right at
Yeah,
school,
yeah, exactly. And I mean, so I think, we all agree that the system is good. We all have. I think we all can identify if we could pick one trail segment that we'd like to accelerate. We all know what it is, and I think we should use that and use the scoring system, but stay true to the system, and then let's look for money, because money is the one thing that can accelerate the process.
But I just think of the amount of work, like how many sections there are, and it's not even everything. These are the ones that have been identified, and just the amount of work that goes into it, and then the massaging when there is an adjustment.
Well, trust me, in 2016, I was on the council, and our trail analysis was about the loop trail system and about recreation. And I think I and perhaps some other council members talked about, well, you know what? Trails are getting used more and more for transit and for transportation to village centers. And I know Geraldine was not happy with me when I raised this idea that maybe we ought to reprioritize because we need to reflect the needs of the community to get to Ridgedale, to get to our village centers, to get to transit, get to those things, because it kind of upturned the apple cart, and I think it created a lot of work for these guys. But you know what? It was the thing that was the right thing to do. And I think that's what we have to do, is what are the needs of the community? We do not have enough resources to do all the stuff we want to do, but if we can work together to make sure that we're prioritizing in the right way, you know, we're gonna be using our residents'
It's becoming
resources
it's becoming
appropriately.
a bigger issue. So
It is.
To Rebecca's point, you know, even sitting at State of the City, my neighbor at my table was asking about her favorite.
Of course she was.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I got a question about that too. I mean, because we all do, because people in our community are passionate about trails. And then they all, and I talked to Mike about a different one a little bit too. And, you know, I mean, we all have our priorities that we think make sense, but I think having an objective system like this really serves us well. It allows us to explain to the residents we can't keep happy. Yes, Dr. Wilburn.
So I have a question that's tangential, but since we have staff here, I was talking to Mike, and I understand that it's separate. Money comes from a separate place for, but do you have a similar ranking system for existing trails when it comes to repairing
Maintenance?
and maintenance and repair? Repair more.
Yeah, good question. Dr. Wilburn. And we do. It's not as good as this one. I mean, to be honest. Usually we respond to, you know, we've got people on the trails, plowing them, you know, maintaining, we've got people mowing, it's using one of them to track it that way. We don't have specifics on, we need to replace these, other than we use the year and the age primarily, but we don't have a system quite like this to do it. It's more for new construction.
You know, just maybe to add to that, Will, one of the things that I mentioned to Dr. Wilburn was, if you think of trails, just to be specific for tonight, we have trails and then there's sidewalks. And so sidewalks, for example, could use answer about sidewalks, because sidewalks are a little more in depth where we do inspect, because sidewalks are treated a little bit different than trails, because sidewalks you have to really inspect for trips and falls. You have tree roots that can create unevenness in your sidewalks. So we, correct me if I'm wrong, we talked about, once you explain the sidewalk inspections.
Yeah, correct. So we look at trails also, but the sidewalks, we have folks that go out and look at ADA compliance for sidewalks. You know, sometimes you'll see the sidewalk is ground down in some areas as part of the maintenance, but yeah, we make sure that everything is up to speed where trips and falls. On public areas, I mean, there's a lot of connections to private as well. We don't touch those, of course, but yeah, we're making sure we track it.
Okay. So I was telling Mike, so I took a segment of trail last year. I rode out to Purgatory Park, and I just probably went the way Google Maps told me, so it wasn't a way I had gone before. And there was a section of trail that was brutal. It was it was not a fun ride at all. Just like tree roots all over the place, and I thought if my cargo hadn't been strapped down, I wouldn't have had cargo by the time I got to the end of it. So, like, if we come across that, should we just let you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you're seeing anything like that, let me know.
Okay.
I had a question about funding because, you know, there have been a lot of programs that have just been ended recently, and you know, we got a kind of sobering budget forecast for the state as well, and so I'm just wondering, you know, we have so many worthy sections and so few dollars, and you know, we do have a separate funding stream, but what are you seeing, you know, have you heard any word about, you know, how, what kind of grant funds might still be available, or are those going to dry up?
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, we don't know yet. It's you know, the money we got for Hopkins Crossroad was federal. You know, so that was administered through someone else. It's federal money that went through you know, another organization through the state, but we don't have anything yet. We're certainly tracking it. We'll continue to apply for anything available. You know, folks can.
Yeah, I would add that we've been pretty successful with Hennepin County too, and I think those funds are maybe a little more secure, at least in the short term, but longer, that's maybe unknown. So we'll actually be applying for a couple of grants here by May, and I think we'll do pretty well for say the section Minnetonka Boulevard from the marsh to Tonkawood, but longer range, what are those implications? I haven't heard.
You know, a related question is, I mean, you know, when a road project, you know, you live in a state, you have a big highway project going on, and the economy's in the tank, and you sit there and say, well, gee, why are they doing this when the economy stinks the way it does? Well, it's because it was approved 3 years ago, and that money's allocated. And I think we're in a mode now where we're working off money that's been allocated. It's future allocations that are going to be challenging. Is that a fair statement? So things are still happening because they were approved before things change dramatically, and that's very typical in government. But I did have one of the funding questions I had, and I know we covered this in our study session previously, and there wasn't a big appetite for proposing increases to the franchise fees at that time. But I was thinking about franchise fees in the context of the stormwater utility. I mean, I remember when the stormwater utility was implemented and it was $3 a household a month, and now it's over double that. And it's because it's indexed. And maybe that's something we should consider, you know, for the future, is perhaps indexing our franchise fees and just say, we're going to index them to the power rates and the gas utility rates that they charge. And we're just going to go up the same percentage they do when they do, because that would at least keep pace with inflation without us taking a big controversial out of whack vote. So that's an idea that, not for tonight, but one that I throw out there as a possibility. No, you can tell me that that's illegal.
No, so the franchise fee is something that would have, it's an ordinance, so you'd have to have a change with that.
Right.
With the utilities for both CenterPoint and Excel on that end of it. I love the idea of it, because the flat fee doesn't index ever. So it's flat from whenever you said it back in 2018, 2019.
But could we pass one ordinance to index it at the same rate as the utility rates go up, so we don't have to keep voting on it time and time again?
Absolutely. You set it as a percentage and not a flat fee.
Yeah.
You set it as a percentage, say it's 3%, whatever Excel or CenterPoint raises their rates by, you get 3%.
That's right. And guess what? That's going to go up at higher than the rate of inflation.
Right.
So, I mean,
solar.
Pardon me?
Unless we all go solar.
Trust me, I don't think we have to worry about that anytime soon. So anyway, I think maybe take another look at some point, because I mean, we know the costs have gone up. We know the total tariff has gone up, and you know, we can keep going at the pace we are, but we'll never catch up, and maybe we'll never catch up anyway. But maybe we can get closer if we get creative about how we're gonna fund it.
So that was part of that conversation at the last study session.
Yeah.
And there was not an appetite in the council to move in that direction. We did present it that way.
Okay. Well, pardon me. Well, anyway,
So if
maybe another good question.
If you want to move in that direction, it would take two things. One, as Darren mentioned, an ordinance change. And then second, Excel Energy would have to sign an agreement and agree to it, and then have an agreement executed.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be a negotiation with Excel.
Yeah.
And it's not really even a negotiation, it's just basically us telling them basically on that end of it. And Excel will push back and say it's illegal, but it's not illegal, because it says it's straight in the state statutes that we can do whichever we want. And
well, and when they put it on the bill as a city fee, it's not like they're taking credit for it.
Right.
So anyway, food for thought. I'm not proposing that, but and pardon my anyway. Well, and I think, you know, I mean, I think the reality of the list, and this provides context, because I think every one of us has a trail segment that we'd like to put at the top of the list. Every one of us. All right. Anything else, or should we call it a night?
I think you've answered our question, and then I would just go back to Deb's point earlier on that trail segment. For any project, and I think you got a flavor of that from our engineer, from Will and Phil and Matt, that when there's a county project, well, first let me say it this way. The county is a really good partner to us, in the sense that from a staff-to-staff perspective, the county staff and our staff meet, and there's lots of coordination that occurs because we share our 5-year capital improvement plans, and they share theirs. And so that's a really important conversation to have from a planning perspective. So in the essence, like for Baker Road, with, it's Three Rivers, there's lots of partners in that. And so when that happens, Deb, to your point, and to any project, we're gonna look at our trail improvement plan, and we'll look to see if there are ancillaries, arterial roadways that abut it, that where you can expand and try to tackle some of those projects at that time. It's probably hard to commit today whether, yes, that's gonna get done or not get done, but I assume it'll get looked at.
For me, it was more broader, like, how often do we do that? And we do it fairly often, and is it, so, just thinking about reprioritizing that, small sections.
I will say, I believe our team, Matt and Phil and Will, are quite opportunistic at finding ways to get more segments done in our city. I believe that, so. All right, we're done. Thanks, everybody.
We do have, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Oops, so we do have one other thing. We have to review next.
I know,
We have to review next month.
Yep.
Okay.
Just to affirm in April, so in April we have Chief Fox will be here, be primarily all about fire. So we'll have a fire station analysis.
Yep.
So we'll be talking about what that looks like with all 5 stations, but certainly our new central isn't done. So it's really kind of looking at the 4 existing stations. And then along with that, fire service level objectives. So we'll be talking about, for you, council, you'll need to decide what that looks like in terms of what are our standards for response to EMS calls. So that'll be discussed, and then Miranda will tee up a city manager review process. So that's April. And then May, real quick, is the budget kickoff. And then we'll have Peter Leatherman here for the annual community survey and the business survey and community facilities in May. So April and May, very busy. June is CIP and EIP.
Oh, that's good.
So lots of stuff going on in the next 3 months. If you want to make a change to that schedule, this is your time to tell us as staff.
No.
All right.
Oh, that looks good. Just one comment. I was really encouraged by what Kevin said tonight about, if we're going to have 3 of our 5 firehouses capable of having overnight staff, that means we've got 2 left. Now, I know that there's big issues with those remaining 2, including one may have a location challenge. So there's still big expense out there. But to me, having the ability to have firefighter, 2 things I heard tonight that really brightened my day. One was the opportunity with our new technology to take, 60 to 75 seconds off of response time from a particular station. That is huge. Fire doubles in size every minute. So, that means we're going to have fires that may be half the size they otherwise would be. That was great news to me. And then the fact that knowing that we have big fire station needs, that 3 of our 5 can handle overnight staff, that was new news to me too. That was really good news.
Trying to handle overnight staff.
Well, that's it. I'm confident they're not everything they should be. And we haven't, there's a lot, haven't seen the station study, but I was encouraged by that. All right, I'm done. Sorry.